For anyone in the audience, if you can log in with their first and last name, that would help us as we're taking attendance.
Hey, Jerry?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, are we gonna want to put up the actual worksheet up onto the screen like we've done before with screen share, or?
Probably a good idea, if we can.
See which one we have here.
I don't know, I just thought it would.
I can put it up there, Jerry. I just gotta,
Okay.
the spreadsheet,
Okay, because I did put a few things on mine, so.
unless you want yours up there. Either way, you guys can share it or we can share it.
Well, we have, which were you doing? Just the one with the warrant article amounts or the full budget? Or it's not really the full budget, but,
It's the budget worksheet.
okay.
The one that showed the changes, that's probably what people want to see is the changes in the warrant articles. Is that the one, Jerry?
It's really just the worksheet that has all the changes on it.
Yep.
Yeah, the other one just has what the final number is
Okay.
for each warrant article and where it's been in the past. At this point, are you letting in the public, or is that what's going on, or is the public in the waiting room?
So all the public is now in attendance.
Thank you.
Yeah, just like at the regular budget committee meetings, in the room, the panelists are your school board and your budget committee and school administration, and then all of the public is listed under your attendees. So I think you guys can see both participants or panelists and attendees.
Hey, Deb, it's Joe. Can I ask the question real quick?
Sure.
Is the charter school seats considered special education?
Not technically, no. That's just where it's in the budget.
Oh, okay. Because I see that we were taking 18,750 out of special education, but I believe that's the charter school.
That's
I
the
just wanted to
charter.
clarify.
Yeah, that's the charter school. That's where it sits.
Okay,
Yeah, that's the
thank you.
charter schools, Joe.
Yeah, it just shows special ed. That's why I just wanted to see where it was actually coming from. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, my worksheet didn't print really nice. So,
I'll put it up there once you guys get going, but I think we
right,
gotta wait
of
for more
course,
people.
that's awesome. I think that's the best way. I think it's the best way so people can see too. We'll see what's going on.
I see that panel list is growing. That is awesome. The people are paying attention. I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, Lonnie.
Hi there, how are you?
I just had a little problem there, but
You're here, you made it.
yeah.
And John's here too.
Yeah, I'm over here.
That 6 o'clock meeting time trick really worked.
Yeah, John, I told everybody you were focused on making it at 6 o'clock, so you'll be here at 6:30 for sure.
That's it. That's the way it goes.
It is 6:30 now, but it looks to me like we're waiting for a few more people, so we will hold it a little bit longer. All right. Good evening, everyone. As the school district moderator, due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to executive order 2020-04 under RSA 91-A, the public school budget hearing is authorized to be held electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen to contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I'm confirming that we are utilizing Zoom for this electronic hearing. All members of the school budget committee and school board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this hearing through this platform, and the public has access contemporaneously to participate by clicking on the following website address, www.lin-wood.org/meetings, or by calling 646-876-9923. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom. Instructions have been provided on the website, www.linwood.org. If anybody has a problem accessing the meeting, please email sholt@lin-wood.org or call 603-745-2051, extension 210. And thank you for joining us at the Lincoln Woodstock School District Budget Hearing and Warrant Review. My name is Robert Wetherill. I'll be moderating the meeting. The Budget Committee and school board members are appointed and elected officers. What seems like a subtle difference, the Budget Committee is tasked with being budget conscious while doing the best for our district. While the school board needs to do what's best for our district while being conscious of the budget. That can prove to be a big and difficult difference. We are here to do what's best for the Lincoln Woodstock community. Thank you both of the boards for your efforts. I think we can all understand the direction the two boards need to take. My wife and I are homeowners, and not that long ago, our daughter graduated from here. We're concerned about taxes and want what's best for our students. That's where the voters come in. What do you want and at what costs? Please share your opinions and ask questions tonight. The school district annual meeting is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, March 16th. Coming on the heels of the general election, we're all well aware of how diverse we are. We're also lumberjacks, and being a lumberjack comes with pride and responsibility. The purpose of the hearing is to allow the Budget Committee to publicly review the 2021-2022 proposed school budget and additional warrant articles, which will be voted on in March. A public hearing is designed to allow the public to speak and to offer input. There are a few courtesies to help the hearing run smoothly. Each participant will treat each other participant respectfully. If at all possible, please have your video on. Please remain muted during the full presentation unless called upon. Public attendees and panelists not involved in the direct presentation will be invited to participate at particular times throughout the hearing. Public attendees and panelists can participate by utilizing the raise hand function. Raise hand, and when you are called upon, you will be brought into the hearing to speak. A maximum of 3 minutes will be allotted to each public attendee. That certainly does not apply to the presenters, although I will not time that at all. And that brings all of the stuff that we have to cover first, bringing us to the school budget warrant article. And I would call on the Budget Committee. Mr. Barnaby and Mr. Stringham, I believe, are presenting.
Right. Yes. Hi, everyone. Am I on? I think I am. Hi, I'm Tucker Barnaby. I've been elected to the chair of the Lin-Wood School Budget Committee. Please let that be a lesson not to be late to the first meeting. All right. Anyways, the committee had several meetings at the end of last year and the beginning of this year. We've been meeting twice a week, trying to do what we feel is appropriate and consciously budget conscious for the town of Lincoln while still providing a strong education here at the school. As we just heard, actually, I like what you said. So I want to thank the colleagues first for the dedication and the contributions that they've all put. It's been a great board. There's been multiple wonderful discussions. It's been a really great experience to be involved with this and to work with these individuals. We also did it with support of the SAU's leadership, Dr. Judith McGain, and with Debbie O'Connell. I want to thank them also for all that they were able to provide for us and help us and fill in some of the blanks for us. During these meetings, we reviewed the budget. We went through every line multiple times. There were lots of discussions. Many areas were looked at exhaustively and remained unchanged. There are others we have changed, and I'm sure there's lots of discussions tonight, and we are here to present those changes to you so that you can all see the changes and please comment to us. Our job is to look this over, to listen to the public, to listen to everybody, and then our final recommendations will be done after this meeting. The budget request for our taxpayers is substantial, and we only do so after having gone through this thorough process. The warrant article is for $7,727,338. This would be, this would be $26,831 per student. The clerk of the committee will speak about the warrant article to fund the schools. And that will be Jerry Stringham. Afterward, there will be times for questions and for you to make comments. Later on tonight, as I've mentioned, the Budget Committee will be meeting again to consider all the comments that are made tonight so that we can make our final recommendation and submit our warrant article. At this time, I think Jerry wanted to speak and go over some of the numbers. Jerry, is that correct? Are you there?
Yeah, I think I'm here. Let's see if I can get this to come up for me. Okay, here we go. Thank you very much, Tucker, and thank you for your great leadership and over the course of our deliberations. We are very pleased to bring forward this warrant article to request taxpayers approve payment of $7.7 million roughly to fund the educational needs of our students. As Tucker said, this represents $26,831 per student, which represents a substantial investment and commitment to our SAU, our schools, and our students. As our chairman said, we diligently reviewed every line item in the budget before making this request of our residents and property holders. Among the commitments is, most importantly, our staff, which is funding for 67.5 employees for the next year. 37.5 for teachers, 12 additional or paraprofessionals, not included as teaching staff, 5 to support our facilities, 2 principals, and our leadership team and their staffs. In the detailed review of the draft budget, we fully funded the special needs programs, including 17 full-time staff, which includes the 12 paraprofessionals, 4 special education teachers, and the director. In addition, we fund what is called the Partners Program, a program for 7 of our students with most significant needs, occupational therapy services, physical therapy services, the hearing and testing services, and some outside expenditures for special cases. Fully funding our requested warrant article funds the athletic programs at the existing level and maintains art and music in the school and the summer education opportunities for those who want or need it. We did reduce the level of expenditure for holding 6 seats in the charter school. This year it largely went unused, so we reduced the warrant article to limit the guaranteed payment to 3 students, and that shows up there in the special education group, even though it's not technically a special education item. This warrant article asks a lot of our taxpayers. Lin-Wood has one of the highest taxpayer costs per student in the state, and this warrant article asks for about $27,000 per student. An extensive study by the state government with about 50 meetings and included a budget of $500,000 with very highly skilled team led to the conclusion that about $16,000 is enough money to provide an adequate education. That was a unanimous recommendation, subject to variations based on special needs and so on. There are other districts in the state below 10,000 that have difficulty meeting the maximum allowed class size requirements. Many towns can't afford to fully fund their schools. We are very fortunate that we can. But despite being above the state adequacy formula, we recommend supporting this warrant article. Regarding our school budget, Lin-Wood has a very high teacher to student ratio, which provides for small classes by state standards. This is the biggest driver of high per student costs in our school system. The number of students in our school has declined, however, by about 20% in the past 10 years. This budget maintains the same number of teachers per student that was in place about 10 years ago. Classroom sizes are maintained significantly below state requirements and state averages with this warrant article. We believe that taxpayers should support this article at this high level as an investment in support of our community. Our budget is built upon limiting senior administration pay increases to the rate of inflation and recommended that the school board work on the same terms that we do, which is without compensation. These reduce the warrant article by about $13,000. Our budget also anticipates that our maintenance staff can do some of the work that was to be contracted out, and the administration will see that this is done. And the requested warrant article does involve fewer staff than we had last year, but still at very high level by state standards that we reviewed. We based our staffing levels on analysis of current class sizes, which are in some cases very small, in rare cases even 2 students in a classroom. Overall, the changes in the size of the warrant article from the initial numbers we received to the final numbers corresponds to tax savings of about $200 for a home in North Woodstock with an assessed value of $200,000, or a reduction of about almost just below 5% of the overall property taxes rates. In Lincoln, the difference for a $200 home would be about half that, or $100. Again, we are putting forward a warrant article asking the taxpayers to provide $7.7 million of their money to provide for the school. While our warrant is about 7.8% less than the amount we received as a proposed budget, we also recognize the budget is demonstrably higher than one at state average. In our view, the budget is more than adequate to provide for a quality education of our children and the administration to pursue programs to improve the performance of our students. We are very grateful in this process to the senior staff, principal, and teachers who participated, but particularly Dr. McGann and Debbie, who had a lot thrown on them, and the budget committee. Also thanks board member Joe Bossi for his participation throughout the process. As we all know, when it involves our kids or our money, it gets very personal, and I'm very grateful for my colleagues and everyone for participating. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And if that's from the budget committee, I then recognize someone from the school board to comment.
Hi, Rob. Thanks. This is Matt Manning from the Lin-Wood School Board. So that there isn't any confusion, there's a few things that I think people should know. When the budget committee refers to the school board's budget that was handed them this year, you should know that that budget was the school board administration handed off was 1.5% less from the budget committee's budget that they presented to the voters last year. The exact wording of last year's budget warrant article was, shall we approve Article 7 to raise and appropriate the budget committee's recommended sum of $8,465,163 for the support of the schools. Jerry had just mentioned that the number of students enrolled is down from 10 years ago, but it's actually up roughly 20 students from last year. The budget committee has further reduced their budget from last year an additional 9%. Over the last 10 years, the budget and school board have been in agreement 7 out of the last 10 budgets. Often the 3 times that we were not in agreement, the amount of money was $20,000 or $40,000. It was never as significant as the cuts that are being proposed this evening. Also, just 3 years ago, the budget committee added money to the budget presented to them by the school board administration's budget. So what's changed this year? I just want to talk a little bit of the structure of the budget committee. Cooperative School District RSA 195:12-A. The budget committee shall have the same number of members as the cooperative school board plus 1 additional member from the school board as provided in this paragraph. The terms of this office and manner of election of members shall be determined in the same manner as for the cooperative school board. This year, and the past 5-6 years, there have not been enough elected budget committee members to form a quorum. Year after year, the committee needs to recruit members in order to form a quorum. These members are not elected. The community has had no voice in who will be representing their interests. In 2017, 5 vacancies on the budget committee and only 1 name on the ballot. 2018, no one on the ballot with 3 write-ins. 2019, only 4 committee members. And in this year, there were only 3 elected budget committee members with 4 open positions that no one ran to fill. 3 of those spots were filled through invitation by the budget committee. Two of my biggest concerns regarding the budget being presented by the budget committee tonight as I believe that in-person learning is at risk in the fall. I'm concerned that the reduction in staff will create a scenario that will most likely require the school to start next year via remote learning. We're in the midst of a pandemic, and Lin-Wood would no longer be able to meet the guidelines for safe physical distancing in some classrooms. Projecting forward, I do not see a situation where students and staff are not wearing masks and being distanced through next winter. The budget committee voted not to hold tonight's meeting in person in the gymnasium, citing the risk of gathering during the pandemic, which I agree with. And one member even said that They were community leaders and needed to lead by example. If we're not willing to meet with roughly 60 people in a 100 by 100 space for a couple of hours, why would it be okay to put 15 to 20 students and staff in a 15 by 15 classroom for 5 days a week for 7 hours? Second, the reduction in staff will exponentially increase the learning loss that has been created by the continuing demands of the pandemic. Not only due to the learning models and platforms being utilized, but the additional environmental pressures and stress on students and their families, financial, social, and emotional. We're not manufacturing widgets. Lin-Wood is developing young men and women who have a purpose, goals, and dreams. We are providing a safe environment, meals, academic and social opportunities, as well as a safety net. Lin-Wood is the epitome of a community school. It's our centerpiece. It is our village. Lastly, over the course of the budget committee meetings, I was dismayed by the tone of some of the members of the group and by the willingness of other members to sit back and allow it to happen. It was unprofessional, unwarranted, and not the example community leaders should set. Thank you to the administration for all your hard work, not just through the budget committee sessions, but the effort you have made to find balance and navigate the school through the challenges of the pandemic. Staff, I want to thank you as well. You are appreciated. The demands of being a public school staff member are incredible during a normal year, but this year you have all been amazing. The criticism by some is naive and unfair. Thank you for all that you do. I'd like to turn it over to Jay Dugay.
Hear me? I'll start off by saying that I echo most of the remarks by Chairman Manning regarding his concerns about the proposed budget of the budget committee. I also want to address the committee this evening regarding the proposed budget on 3 additional issues. And first, I think the committee has relied during its meetings and continues to rely this evening on a comparison between the state average cost per pupil and the cost per pupil that we see here in our district, in claiming essentially that our school is an outlier and that we're spending too much money. But I think that's not an apt comparison. That state average is heavily weighted towards large districts like Manchester and Nashua, where they have 13,000 and 11,000 students respectively. And it's meaningless to compare a state average to a district like ours with less than 300 students. It really, truly is apples to oranges. Obviously, larger districts can defray the fixed costs of operating a school, like buildings, utilities, administration, over thousands of students, and we cannot do that. A more apt comparison is to similarly sized districts. Districts like Pittsburgh High School at $36,000 per student, Sunapee High School, $29,000 per student, Profile, 26, Moultonboro, 29, Pittsburgh, 29, Arrow Middle Elementary, 25, Lisbon, 27, Lisbon Middle School, 27, Stratford Middle Elementary, 23.5, Moultonboro Middle School, 34,000, Monroe Elementary, 30,000, Sunapee Middle School, 30,000, Hinsdale Middle School, 25, Madison Elementary, 35, New Durham Elementary, 33, Cornish, 29, and Stark, 26. It's just a spattering of similarly sized schools that experience similarly sized cost per pupil. Our school is not an outlier when compared apples to apples to other similarly sized districts. We cannot compare ourselves to districts like Manchester or even Plymouth and expect to see a similar cost per pupil. That's not realistic, and it's of no use in developing our budget. Our high school is one of the smallest in the state of New Hampshire. We are always going to be above the average cost per student. We do not have the opportunity to take advantage of the economies of scale that a school like Nashua or Manchester or even Plymouth does. But as a baseline, in order to make an apt comparison, we need to be comparing apples to apples, schools of similar size, when we're considering how much or whether we are an outlier or not. The second issue is I don't think that the committee has adequately considered the effect that cutting the budget so dramatically will have on the day-to-day operation of the school. And I had the opportunity to listen in on a budget committee meeting earlier this week, and I heard several members of the committee sort of openly acknowledged that they didn't know enough about the day-to-day operation of the school to make some of the decisions that were being discussed. But then essentially just decide to cut the equivalent of 2 full-time elementary school positions without any discussion of what effect that would have on the day-to-day operation of the school. And even after openly admitting that they don't know enough about that operation to make that assessment. Then the cuts to the equivalent of 4 full-time positions in the high school have potentially even more dire consequences. There are classes that are required by the state and federal guidelines that we have to provide, and they need to be taught by properly certified teachers. There did not appear to be any consideration given to whether the school would even be able to deliver the required education if we were forced to eliminate 4 full-time positions in the high school. And not to single anyone out, just as by way of an example, we can't simply just have the band director start teaching calculus because he doesn't have the proper teaching certification for that subject. And potentially we're putting our DOE approval at risk, our ability to receive state and federal grant money, and our accreditation. It doesn't appear that the committee gave due consideration to how some of these proposed cuts would impact the district's ability to deliver the day-to-day required educational components to our students, and to just generally operate the schools. And I strongly urge the committee to reconsider the proposed sort of wholesale cuts to staffing that are included in this budget and proceed to find savings in a more measured way where the full impact of those actions can be considered before they're implemented and not as a sort of post hoc after these wholesale cuts are already made. And lastly, one of the other issues that's sort of up for debate this evening is the Budget Committee's not recommending any of the warrant articles that were proposed or that were put to them by the board. And specifically, I'd like to address, I believe it's approximately $154,000 for the completion of the roof replacement project. That is a critical infrastructure project. The section of the roof that we're proposing to replace has leaks. That section, and failure to address that may in time have more significant consequences than the money that we're spending now. This request represents the final phase of a approximately 10-year maintenance and replacement plan. The board prioritized going forward with a slightly more than was originally planned on the roof project so that we could finish it. But in exchange for that, we eliminated a portion of the flooring replacement project for this year. So we offset the additional costs to the roof project by removing the flooring replacement project to keep that cost at about what it was typically on an annual basis for the last 10 years. And again, or approximately 10 years. And the flooring was also a multi-year replacement project that's been underway for some time now. So again, the cost is roughly equivalent just for the roofing project that's proposed this year to what we would normally be spending on both the roofing and the flooring projects. And you know, as the saying goes, a stitch in time saves 9, and failure to complete the project before the roof deteriorates further and causes damage to the school, I think is short-sighted. So I urge you to reconsider and support, at least support the roofing project and basically vote to add your support to the board's support for the passage of that warrant article. Thank you.
Okay, and back to the budget for the general budget. I would open that up to public comment questions. Again, there's a raise hand function. If you would use that, we'll call on you. Please state your full name before you start, and you will have 3 minutes. I don't know if you'll be able to see me on your screen while you're talking. I'll give you a 1-minute warning that's included in your 3 minutes, and then we'll cut you off and let somebody else speak. We'll also let anybody go who hasn't yet spoken before we give somebody a second chance.
So I think how it works, Robert, is once they raise their hand, we will allow them to talk and they come into the room and they can see, and then we'll bring them back out.
Great.
So do you want to
Thank you,
call
Deb.
on them and then we'll allow them in?
Yeah,
You know?
I don't know if I can see where hands are raised. So
Yeah, I
if
see.
one of the hosts needs to do that, then I'll allow you to do that for sure.
Okay. Okay, we'll bring in the first one that we see, Paul Bowden.
Hello.
Oh, there he is.
Hello, we can hear you.
Good evening. My comments are based as a taxpayer and also as a longtime school board member from years past, and currently a budget committee member in the town of Lincoln. My comments are twofold. Very simply, that we need to reduce the school budget. Does it need to be to this amount? I'm not sure about that, but it seems like there's a lot of bickering between the school board and the budget committee. But I also know that the reason that there are not a lot of people that run for the school board, the school budget committee, is because they feel like they can't get anywhere. So they would like to see some reductions, but every time they try and get some reductions, it seems to be a hard sell to everybody. And I personally, as a longtime taxpayer, would like to see the school budget reduced. To what extent, I don't know, but I think there needs to be some reductions made. It's grown exponentially over the years, and I applaud the school budget committee for their efforts. I think it's a little too much, but I also think that they should work with the school board. And I can't believe that the two boards can't get together and come up with a reasonable budget to proceed to support our children and their education. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, just brought in, I think, Paul Sherdewan.
Hi, y'all. This is Paul Sherdewan, and I'm glad both the school board and school budget board are working together. One thing that I see from my perspective is I think it would help a lot if the school board had a rigorous 5-year plan, and both the school board and budget board can work together on a 5-year plan. I submitted a warrant on Monday morning to bring in an independent New Hampshire Department of Education approved contractor to look at costliness and effectiveness for Lin-Wood School. And in the end, when the names were bounced against the voter rolls, I was 1 vote shy to bringing that warrant, and I'll bring it up again at the town meeting. But I think this is the best solution for both boards to work together around a common plan and common goals. But this underscores the need for a plan, a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan, so they coincide, the academics and the budget. For example, 3 years ago, Miss Everett brought in to the elementary school a math and a English program, and I have to applaud her for good foresight on doing that. Now, later on, the middle school, or right now, the middle school does not have a math plan or an English plan. And the principal said that we need to double dose the tutoring for the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and do some catch-up tutoring and things like that. Coincidentally, Miss Everett, who brought up those good plans 3 years ago, she said that she wanted to combine the classes for the elementary school, not the student teacher ratios, mind you, but she wanted to combine those classes to bring it together synergies. And she said the results from doing so would be very promising. So what I'm just saying is that I think there's room to bring together these classes and maybe pull off half a time staff or a full staff and do the tutoring that's needed in the middle school that we kind of left behind for the last 6 years, truly. And as a principal suggested, and as is Everett suggested, so we're at least going in the right vector, and we might not reduce staff in the end, but I think we can get a better result using our resources more efficiently. And if we have a common plan, I think if we all work on that plan and have things written down, not just, talking about it and have a new plan every week, I think we can work together and, zero in on something that we can work together, because eventually the rubber will meet the road in this, because we can't keep going. We've gone up rapidly in the last couple of years on this budget, more so than the other school districts have, even the high ones. We have to pinpoint why we went up so quickly in the last few years. But this is just one example of having a plan that I think would help both boards work together at. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Paul.
Kelsey Bowden's in.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Kelsey Bowden, resident and taxpayer of Woodstock, New Hampshire, graduate of Lin-Wood, class of '06. I would like to first ask the Budget Committee if we can stop comparing back in the day to present day school settings. Perhaps you all should spend a day in the school building and see exactly what goes on within those walls, what student dynamics are made up of, both regular education and special education, the trauma and mental health that is present, and what teachers, administration, and all other faculty do for work on a daily basis, both inside the school and outside of school on their own time. And then perhaps you may have a very different outlook on the positions you are trying to cut, rather than just, it worked back in the day for this, and back when I was in school for that. As a previous teacher who still currently works with children in a school setting and watching only a few of your meetings, it's very apparent that as a majority, you either hold grudges against the district as a whole or personnel within the district, and do not seem to be serving for the right purpose, nor have the best interest of the district in mind. I'm glad a couple of you see the importance of 2 classes per grade in the elementary level. Mr. McAfee, you talk highly of the low ranking of the elementary school. By eliminating teachers, therefore increasing class sizes, let me ask how this is going to increase the ranking in the future. It's certainly not going to allow students to receive a quality education that you speak of. Furthermore, have you thought of the impact on the special education monies allotted and the possibility of having to tuition these students out of district so their needs can adequately be met? You think the budget is high now? I have also heard in the meetings the discussions of the high unemployment rates in the current times, yet reducing positions will lead to unemployment for some within the district, and you seem fine with that. Lastly, I strongly encourage you as a committee to reconsider your proposed budget, and I would like to personally thank all faculty, administrators, and the school board for the work you have done and continue to do on a daily basis, especially in these trying times. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Well, I would like to respond to that since she did bring my name up specifically. When
Sure.
This is Robert McAfee. I too am a graduate of Lin-Wood and have grown up here. I too have got a couple of kids that have spent some time in the local school system. And one of the things that I would like to bring up specifically is when we talked to everyone within the school system, we looked for rankings that were provable from within our own school system. We didn't find any. We didn't find any measurement metrics. We didn't find anything at all that was supported by the staff showing exactly what level of school we were putting together here. I personally went out and shared everything that I found with everybody that was involved in this budgetary process. And the ranking systems of our school are not balanced with the amount of money that's being spent. So then we looked at what the state requirements are. What are the minimum requirements of a state for a school? If we were to go with that level, that the state actually requires, you would see budget cuts of several $1 million, not a few $100,000, several $1 million. In the layout of what the school has versus what you have for an actual rating level. If you go online, I'm not going to bother telling you what those rating levels are, but go see what you can find. How is the school ranked? Because there's no measurement metrics being set up within the school to evaluate what's being done within the school. We requested it of everyone. We said, hey, I can't even believe what I'm seeing here. Bring us something, show us something to tell us that the school is doing better than what this is showing. No one brought forth anything, nothing at all. So as a representative of the taxpayers, and no, I was not elected. I agreed to go in and look at what's happening within the actual budget and do the best I can for the taxpayers and the students as well. There was talk earlier by Mr. Manning saying that people didn't run for the office. Well, in the past, my personal opinion is the board had become a cookie cutter, and everything that was done by the school board was just expected to be stamped and approved by a budget committee. When I agreed to come on the budget committee, I said I'd only do it if I could seriously look at exactly what's going on, because when we ran the numbers we were putting out, based on everything that everybody wanted to do this year with all the different warrant articles and everything, it was going to amount to over $31,000 per student. The top, I think the top 25 schools in the state, regardless of size, spent an average of $18,000 per student. Yeah, this budget that we're looking at, everything approved would be $31,000 per student. Far beyond. One of my big concerns was simply, are you getting your dollar value here? When you have...
I'm afraid your time is up, Robert. Thank you.
I didn't know I was limited on time, as I am a budget committee member.
That's right. The original presentation was unlimited. All debate is 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, can I add to some of that? Is that allowed?
I really would like to go with the public comment if we can, but I'll let you go because we did let the other board go.
Well, no, I just, and again, I don't know as a committee if we're allowed to respond. I think they want some response. I don't know. From what I heard tonight, and I want to add to what Robert's saying, when Robert said that it could be several $1 million cut from the budget, what he's talking about is the actual minimum requirement to retain approval, to retain accreditation. That's what he's talking about when he said it could be several million. They actually could run the school at very minimum with lots less money. Lots more cuts. So I want that we are not looking as a committee to do anything that would ruin the accreditation of the school. I also want to add that I heard tonight about how little there was, and again, involvement in this committee. Every member on this committee has spoken multiple times at their meetings that they would love to do this for more than 5 weeks. They would be willing to commit their time to spending the next year to be involved in building another budget. So that this is not just a bunch of people who are doing it real quick. They've been given 5 weeks to put together something to help the taxpayers, to support the school. And it's a very difficult and tough position for all these people. And there was a lot of consideration, a lot of debate, and nothing was done willy-nilly. So I just wanted to put that out there, that each one of these individuals worked hard and has the wherewithal to continue to do this and do what's good for the community and for the school. Just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Tucker. For both school board members and budget committee members, unless there's a direct question, we'll let the public continue with their comments first. And if there's a direct question, we'll allow you to answer that. So we'll go back to Debbie for raised hands, please.
Okay, there's Hannah. Hannah, you're in the room.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, good evening. My name is Hannah Kinney, Woodstock resident, taxpayer, mother of 2 children, one who will be starting kindergarten at Lin-Wood in the fall, and a 2-year-old who will start in about 3 years. I completely agree with Kelsey Bowden. And I would also add that, you know, education is one of the most important pieces in our government, if not the most important. And we should be spending as much money as we can on it. Cut money out of other departments, not education. The fact that it's hard for the community to seat or find people to run for the budget committee suggests that we don't need it, and that the school board can take on that responsibility until there is more interest in people actually running for that committee. It would and maybe we need more school board members to take on that responsibility. But if we can't seat people by election, then the school board can take over that responsibility, and then the voters can decide if they approve the budget or not. That makes the most sense. Especially that now that COVID has happened and we see how important school is. And I do appreciate that Lin-Wood has tried very hard to keep the school open. It's very important. And I want to commend them for doing that. But we can see how important, how valuable teachers are. And they should be considered some of the most important members of our society. And that seems to be lost on the money pinchers. So I would support, I would encourage, highly recommend the budget committee relook at the money, relook at the budget, and not cut any positions. Consider supporting the warrant articles. I mean, no one wants to spend money on infrastructure, but you got to do it. Let the other boards in the towns cut money elsewhere and raise our taxes if you need to, or don't raise our taxes, just cut it somewhere else. There should not be any attempt to cut funds for education. It's ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Debbie, are there more hands up?
Yeah, Jane, but Jane is muted.
Jane, in the top right-hand corner of your screen, you might have a mute button there that you could click.
I can't unmute her.
Jane, I'm not sure if you're using the Zoom app or not, but if you click on your screen, that may bring up some menus. And then on the top right, there's one that says mute. And if there's a red line through that, if you just click that. Okay, let's
I'll bring
come
someone
back
else
to
in.
Jane and
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep. Okay. Okay, Kristen McClure is in.
It's actually Chris McClure, Kristen's husband, resident of Woodstock, taxpayer, and father of a student. So yeah, thank you for putting this together. Really appreciate the opportunity to hear both sides in this. It is an interesting part of local town politics to kind of hear the two groups coming together. It's disappointing to see such a gap. It's disappointing to see such a gap at a time when I know my Woodstock taxes went up this year. We did a reassessment. My taxes went up significantly, double digits. And now we're talking about reducing the school budget by some 7-8%. So that's a significant net combination loss in terms of what I think the money should be going to the schools. I don't think there's been enough discussion tonight about the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in a situation where the administration at Lin-Wood has done a fantastic job of keeping the schools open. Our kids go to school 5 days a week. They're having not only the education that they need, but the socialization. I mean, look at the opposite here. Okay? If we go to 15, 20 kids per classroom and we have to go to full remote, okay, the kids in this town are going to be sitting at a kitchen table staring at a screen. They're going to stare at a screen for 6 to 8 hours a day. Okay, that's what we do as adults. So we have jobs, we go and have these sort of things. That's not a thing for a child. That's not an education that we're looking for. Okay, there's an opportunity to have the kids in school, to be together with their classmates, to learn in person. Okay, and I didn't hear anything from the budget committee on that. I found the budget committee presentation today to be short-sighted and I'll even call it foolish. there's no long-term plan. Okay, we're talking about a 1-year reaction off of a 5-week set of meetings. I mean, guys, you're good at this. Okay, this is what you were doing. You were brought together to put together a budget. Okay, you should have stated that 5 weeks is not enough time to do this. You don't have the opportunity to go through all of the metrics of the school, to understand all of the things that need to happen. Okay, it's disappointing to kind of see what we've come through. For you to present state comps such that we're comparing ourselves to Manchester and Concord, okay, that's irresponsible. Okay, fortunately, Jay did the work. Jay did the homework tonight so that we actually see what our local comps are. Again, I really appreciate the fact that we're hearing this. It's a debate, it's a discussion, it's a hearing. Okay? And I think it is good, but we got to really look at this, know who your neighbors are, know who your comps are, and then have an interest in providing the best education for the students in town. Okay? It's not about saving a couple $100 per taxpayer. Okay? That is short-sighted, not investing in our future. Okay? And again, thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Chris.
Few technical difficulties there. Tony Drapo's in.
All right.
It's a little pixelated.
Can see you, Tony, but
We can't understand anything, Tony.
I'm not talking. Anybody responding? All right. Maybe I'll type my thoughts in the chat.
yeah, maybe try the chat. We're going to take you out for now, Tony, and then we can try again. Okay, Vicky Martin.
Hi, this is Vicky Martin. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'm a Lincoln resident and taxpayer, and I have 4 kids in school in grades kindergarten through 7th grade. I had a couple of thoughts that I wanted to share. The first is that I really think that the education of our children is the most important investment we make in our community. And I have to agree with Mr. McClure and with Hannah Kinney that that's where we should really be putting our money and making our investment. I heard talk about a 10% cut. I don't know exactly what the percentage is, but it sounds arbitrary, sounds a little bit arbitrary in trying to get our numbers down to other schools that we shouldn't even be comparing ourselves to because we're not of similar size. I'd be interested to know how many teacher positions that represents. I think one of the greatest strengths of our school is our teacher-student ratio. And to look to cut teachers and undercut that strength seems very short-sighted And honestly, these recommendations by the budget committee do not feel like they're in line with the general consensus of the community, and certainly not with the school community. Two other specific things. Number one, the pandemic. I have to agree that we're completely glossing over this. Right now is the most complicated time to have a school open. Less than 20% of schools in the United States are open fully in person. And many of us are extremely grateful to our school and our administration for making that happen for our kids, because that is enormous. But we're also looking at continuing likely to be in the same situation with the pandemic next year. Now is not the time to be cutting teacher positions and increasing the number of kids in classes. We recently had a few cases in school that forced us all to go remote for a period of time while we let the dust settle. When everyone else returned to school, the kindergarten through third grade was left remote. And that was because we didn't have adequate subs and adequate staff to have in the classroom with people on quarantine and other things. Cutting staff right now in the middle of a pandemic would be incredibly unwise and would make it additionally difficult for us to have in-person learning. The last thing is the test scores. There's been talk about the test scores and the rankings, and some members of the budget committee saying, hey, look, our rankings aren't that great. So, by extension, all of this great teacher-student ratio is not, paying out in our rankings. So maybe that should translate to we have less teachers. That honestly seems like at the best faulty logic and at the worst backwards logic. The last thing we want to do is to undercut our strengths in the school while we try to figure out why our rankings or our test scores are less than what we would like to see them be. I have to further support Hannah Kinney's statement about the utility of the budget committee. We have a dedicated school board that meets, multiple times a month all year round. And then we have this non-elected group of members of the community who are coming together for 5 weeks. And the fact the gap between what they're saying and what the school board is saying is so wide, really makes me question the utility of having a budget committee at this point. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Martin.
Brent Bradley.
Hello, Brent.
Hi, sorry I was muted. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I would like to emphasize that I truly appreciate the time that the budget committee puts in, that the school board puts in to this, and I am somewhat saddened to hear that they have 5 weeks to address this. It seems to me to be certainly much more important than something that should be restricted to that length. I have a child in middle school currently in the school, and I recognize many of your names, folks who have spoken tonight, folks on the budget committee on the board, for members commenting. And I would like to emphasize that while I think that cutting taxes is important, and maybe we need to look at where in the entire town budget we could cut taxes. I don't think that cutting services in the school is the right way to go, or cutting staff at the school. In my opinion, if you want to raise your metrics and where you are ranking somewhere, you increase services and you increase the quality of those services. And so I would like to see us raise the percentage of certified professionals in the district. And I would like to see us raise the number of AP classes that we offer. I think, honestly, if you want to raise metrics, that you aim high and you set goals that are attainable, but that are not lowered goals. I don't think this is, now I can't speak to the physical renovations. I've not looked at what types of things need to be done, but certainly An investment in infrastructure is vital, usually, unless you want to pay a lot more for infrastructure a few years down the road. At least that's been my experience. So I would echo the sentiments of Kelsey and Hannah and Vicky, among others, and just say this is not the time to cut. And in fact, this would be a time to look at how we can offer better programs, more advanced programs, and increase teacher certification counts. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent.
Tony, we're trying again with you.
All right, can you hear me this time?
Yes, we can.
All right, yeah. Switched over to my phone. So Tony Drappa from Lincoln. Let me just say, I've had some personal experience through this whole process. You know, a lot of people in the general public don't understand, fully comprehend what goes on into building this budget. I served on the budget committee 2013 to 2014, and then on the school board from 2014 to 2019. So I have some intimate knowledge of what's going on there. For the people who serve on the budget committee and the school board, none of us are experts when it comes to education, when it comes to finance. This budget is chiefly built by our administration and by our finance officer, Debbie O'Connor, with their understanding of what it takes to run a school building. Those of us who run for these offices or these positions on a committee, we do our best to bring our different areas of expertise and our knowledge to the table to make it a better process for everyone. But we're not experts in educational finance. And I think a lot of that is kind of overlooked by the budget committee the last several years. It's been my experience of the budget committee the last few years, their goal has been to cut money. And a lot of times that is an arbitrary amount. And I think, this speaks to that as well. When you're just picking, let's eliminate 6 positions, that's not the job of the budget committee. It's to come up with a bottom line budget without nitpicking what positions they think should be eliminated. They are not the education experts. We defer to the education experts, our superintendent, our principal, our administration. One of the points I just want to make to the budget committee is that these are elected positions. And as has been pointed out, we have 7 positions on the budget committee. 6 of them are filled. Only 3 have been elected, one of which was through a handful of write-in votes. So only 2 of the current 6 members have put their names on the ballot. And I understand and I appreciate all the time they're putting into this. It's not to slight them in any way or the knowledge they bring to the table. But the fact of the matter is when you're in an elected position, you are there to serve your constituents. And our history shows that in the last 10 years, whenever the budget has come conflicted from school board to budget committee where they wanted to cut positions, wanted to cut money, the town stands up en masse at the annual meeting and says, we are putting this money back in. So by coming to us now with a budget that's cutting, $600,000 plus and not funding our warrant articles, is ignorant of the fact that this is not what the public has shown they have wanted historically, year after year after year. And by bringing this budget in at this point, if that's what they approved tonight after this meeting, you are kneecapping our school. To talk about that we could actually run our school for a lot less money just goes to show the lack of knowledge it takes to run a single school SAU and the fact that we don't share services that are expensive. A lot of stuff is being overlooked in that aspect.
Thank you, Tony. That is your time limit.
All right.
Oh, you're back in?
Yes, thank you. I know this is a school budget committee hearing, am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there any way that we can get, as taxpayers, some input from the other school budget committee members as to why they wanted to present this budget or make these recommended cuts, because from what I see, it's about 1.5 million between the special warrant articles and the budget. And it would be nice to know their reasoning why. I mean, we kind of cut Robert off, but I'm sure there's other members on there and they're probably on tonight. Is there a chance that we could hear their reasoning for want to make this recommended budget?
I think that's doable. If there are other hands up for public comment, I'd rather do that first before we go back to the boards.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there aren't any that I see right now. Oh, there is one.
Jane still?
Well, there is another one that just went up.
Okay.
Heather Krill.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I'm Heather Krill. I'm a teacher. I live in Woodstock, and I have listened to all of the budget meetings. And I really appreciate the work that everybody does to support our school community. I do wonder why the budget committee didn't share more about their decisions for cutting what they choose to cut, given how much time was spent going through these line items. There was so much conversation, so much talk, so much knowledge that they really felt strongly about in those budget meetings. And my children are in the 4th and 5th grade, and I could not be more proud of the education that they're receiving at that elementary school. I'm excited for them to grow up here in Lincoln Woodstock. But it would be devastating to imagine the loss of 6 teachers, 4 teachers, even 2 teachers. We haven't been through the reduction of a staff member in a long time. And right now, I see no need for it. I don't think the budget committee has made a valuable argument beyond we have low test scores and our per pupil expenditure is too high. Well, I believe that our per pupil expenditure is totally worth the kinds of kiddos that we are graduating from Lin-Wood Public School, Kelsey Bowden being one of them. I didn't really want to speak tonight. I actually thought more people would speak than have spoken. So I comment, I speak, I care deeply about the school community, and I just really hope that everybody will continue to support the school district in their budget when the school district meeting comes around in March. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Tracy Brumlick is in.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I am a Lincoln resident and I have 2 children in 1st and 6th grade. I specifically moved back here from Albuquerque so that my children could have the education that I did. I graduated in 1986. I am also a member of the town budget committee, and we recommend a dollar amount. We don't tell the departments what they can do with that dollar amount. I think the teachers and the other departments that we're talking about should have been asked for their recommendations and what they thought about this. Our children are blossoming because of our teachers. We need to find the cuts somewhere else. Cutting staff is not a good decision. And that's basically all I have to say.
Thank you, Tracy.
Kim is in. Kim Stratty.
Thank you. You said my name very well.
Great.
I am a tax-paying resident of Lincoln. I do not have any children in the school system. However, I do feel very strongly that education is of the utmost importance. I have one question. I'm not going to make any commentary one way or the other. I would like to know what is the enrollment trend from the kindergarten level up right now? Are we increasing children into the school system, or is it staying level, or is it going lower? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kim.
I'm going to try to unmute here or mute again.
And is there a school administrator that's prepared to answer enrollment trends question?
Robert, this is Judy. What we have now is we just had an additional 20 students come in this year, and it has gone down, but you know, within the past couple of years, it has gone up a couple and it has gone down a couple. We're right now at approximately 286 students, K through 12.
Thank you, Dr. McCann. Deborah, are there more hands up?
I don't see any in the audience right now, but I do see 3 panelists. Oh,
Okay.
a couple more just went up in the audience.
Sure.
Kevin Bell.
Hi, thank you. My name is Kevin Bell, and I'm a Woodstock resident with one child in the elementary school and one that will be starting in the fall. And I just want to take my time here to commend the faculty administration of Lin-Wood School, because they've done an incredible job during this pandemic. And I can't think of a worse time to be making cuts. It is a most important time to keep morale up amongst our town, amongst our community, and to create divisiveness or dissension by eliminating positions and creating more responsibility for less people is a hard emotional tax to put on the members of our community. And I'm completely against these the cuts proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Tony Drapo again.
Yeah, the one last point I just wanted to add is, when we're talking budget, we're talking dollars and cents, and it's always about tax impact to the individual. And by cutting 6 teachers, that's the proposal. Let's forget about the number. That's in the ledger. It says cutting 6 positions from regular education. So my tax impact for that is $150. You're going to save me $150 by putting 6 individuals out of work, not to mention the ripple effect it has throughout our school and our education of our students as we start to crowd the classrooms, as we shift high school students to VLAX courses to learn online because we have eliminated positions. That was just my final thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And I do see now that there are several panelists with their hands up, and I didn't see an order that they went up. So if we can just do one school board member and then one budget committee member and switch back and forth, I think that's the best way to handle it.
Do you want me to speak as the board member that attended all the budget committee meetings?
That's Joe speaking?
Yes, that's me. Sorry about the camera or lack of.
Nope, that's quite okay. I had my screen on, so I couldn't see where the green box was. Go right ahead, Joe.
Okay, thank you. As the board member that did attend all these meetings, first off, I do want to commend the budget committee for their work. And it is a little bit insulting to say that because we're elected as school board members, we're any more intelligent or less intelligent than the budget committee members, because they really do give their time. But that said, we do have lack of state funding coming down the road, and we do need to find ways of cutting this budget. I do not myself support cutting any positions or any of that stuff. But as the board member there, the budget committee is aware that they can't say we need to cut positions, we need to do that. All they can do is not give the funding for it. They do realize that. So they didn't say which teacher to cut or any of that. I just want to be clear about that. Now, as far as our test scores and stuff, yes, our test scores are down. We don't compare to a lot. The old saying that our kids don't test well really isn't good. I don't really go for that. But our current staff, our administration are doing stuff to fix that. Our test scores are going up. There's just no way that we could have a better staff than what we have right now. Our staff is fantastic. They take their jobs home with them. They care about each and every kid, about what they do in school, what they do at home. And I just can't really say enough about them. We will never get a better staff than what we have. There are ways that we're going to have to cut this budget. We all need to come together and do it. It could be sacrificing stipends. It could be doing stuff in-house. We're going to have to sooner or later all group together and find a way to reduce this budget, because it's endless. There's no cap to it, and it's only going to get worse. So it would be better to band together in-house and accomplish this without anybody losing their job. Thanks, Rob. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Bonnie, why don't you go next? We've just heard from a school board member liaison with the budget committee, so we'll go to budget committee next.
Thank you very much. And I agree with Joe Bossy wholeheartedly. It would be very, very nice if the two boards, the school board and the budget committee, could work together and come up with a coordinated plan, as someone previously said, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. The budget committee receives the budget very, very late in the process and do not have any access to any kinds of thoughts that the administration or the school board are thinking. We don't have any idea what they're thinking or what they're putting together for a budget until very late in the game. And I think we had, I don't know, maybe 9 meetings in 5 weeks, 2 meetings a week. We worked away at it. And we are very, very aware that we are not the ones that hire or select staff or have any saying whatsoever over the staffing of the school district. However, we are told that we have to find cuts and we have to find them somewhere. And so we go down through and we come to a few conclusions that the budget is increasing every year. Enrollment is down, and we can't continue at this rate of growth in the school district. 5 years ago, we said, oh boy, when we get to be 10 million, that's when everybody is going to be in an uproar. Well, we're very close to that right now, right? With the warrant articles and so forth, we're there. And so we came into it this year with the thought that we need to start getting this under control a little bit and start weighing in the impact on the taxpayers, and we need to start somewhere. And so we recognize that we have a very high overhead, a very high administrative level expense. We do. We spend a lot of money on administration. We spend a lot of money on contracted services. So I just saw I have 1 minute left. I wholeheartedly agree that if there was a way for us to go about this, administration, teachers, and school board and budget committee work together to try to figure out where we're going from here and what we can afford to spend. I agree. I would love to work with the other groups. We just sit down those 9 meetings and look through. We left special education alone. We left the principal's office alone. We left the guidance alone. We went down through and hashed all the departments. And as always, overhead and your labor costs. I don't care if you're running a small business or you're running a school or a town. Labor is one of your big line items. And so if we were asked, well, where are you going to find some money? Sure. You take it out of the biggest budget, but that doesn't mean that is what we really want to see happen. What we want to see happen is the school.
Bonnie, thank you. Your time is up. And I'll recognize Brian Angelone next.
Hi, guys. Everybody can hear me?
Yes, we can.
I just wanted to touch base. Everybody else is, given some great information. Clearly, the big, factor is the potential cutting of staff members and how that would ultimately hurt our children. For just as Tony Drapo said, for essentially $150, which really is that much. And I don't know how everybody else is, but I don't feel that way. I just wanted to quickly just touch on hoping to get more of an explanation as to why the budget committee is choosing to not support any of the warrant articles, especially pertaining to maintaining the building. And especially just as Bonnie Ham just stated, that we need to start making these cuts, so we're going to end up with higher numbers. So I assume, deciding not to do repairs on a building and maintain a building over the long term is somehow going to decrease that cost. These are things that the budget committee has supported year after year, and we're in close to, I believe, our 10th year on the roofing project without any argument. And now we're trying to close that out, and apparently we don't want to repair a roof anymore. And I just wanted to get their feeling as to why they're not going to support doing general maintenance on the building. And if anyone from the budget committee would like to comment on where they came up with that theory as to just cut all these warrant articles, I would just love to hear it, because maybe I could learn something from that as to why we're not going to, continue to stay on pace with expending money to support our facility. And I'll just leave it at that. And I want to thank everybody for being here.
Thank you, Brian. And for now, instead of moving on to a budget committee for an answer to that, we are going to go through the articles one by one. So right now, we're just talking about that main big budget article right now. And let's see, Jay Duguay. I'm sorry, before I go to you, Jay, Debbie, are there any public hands up?
Paul Bowden is up again. His hand is up again.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, let's hear from Jay first then.
Okay.
I just want to address a couple of things because I think Bonnie Ham made some statements which I think are important to clarify. She said that the budget committee has no idea what the administration and the school board are thinking with regards to the budget, and I'd like to sort of as way of information lay out the way the process works out. Over the course of the fall, the administration solicits the information from the different departments in the school about what their anticipated budget needs are going to be for that year. Factored into that are our existing staffing costs, our insurance costs, and all of the additional costs from every section of the school. That's the building maintenance, that's the middle school science teachers, to all the way down to the kindergarten teachers. They compile that into the recommended budget that's put together from $0 every year by Debbie and Judy and the rest of the administration and Mr. Brivenhow as well. That is the budget that is presented to both the school board and the members of the budget committee that choose to attend those budget information sessions. Debbie goes through that entire budget line by line, explaining every single expense. If the budget committee chooses to attend those, they are free to ask questions. We are explained in detail what every single expense on that budget is, where it comes from, who's requesting it, and why it's there. So I guess I'm a little perplexed as to the statement that Ms. Ham doesn't know what the board and the administration are thinking in regards to that. In addition to that, every single meeting that the school board has regarding the budget is open to the public. Those recordings are available to the public and the minutes are posted. That information is there for anybody that wants to see it. She also stated that they're told to find cuts. They're not told to find cuts. Nobody's telling the budget committee to find cuts. The budget committee is tasked with evaluating the budget and determining whether or not they believe it's appropriate. No one's telling them to find cuts. She also said that it's increasing year after year. That's not true. Actually, this year's budget as proposed by the school board is less than last year's budget, even though our enrollment, which she said was going down, increased by 20 students this year. So both of those, both the increase in the budget year by year and the decrease in enrollment are inaccurate with respect to this budget and the current enrollment and budget trends. In addition, she lamented the lack of a strategic plan. I would note that for the past 2 years, the budget or the school board, the administration has invited members of the community, staff members, administration to participate in the strategic planning committee. That's a committee that's been put together to specifically develop a strategic plan for the district. Not a single member of the current budget committee is a member of that committee, had volunteered to be on that strategic planning committee. And that's something, unfortunately, has been held up at least some degree to COVID and the delays that has caused. But that's an ongoing process. And any member of the board or the budget committee that wants to participate in that, I'm sure would be welcome to do so. But we have that in place. That is something that we're working on, and I think that it's there. I think also she mentioned that they left special ed alone. That's not true. They've cut $18,500 from the special ed budget. She also mentioned that they left administration alone. That's also not true. They cut half of the annual raises for the superintendent's office, amounting to approximately $3,900 out of that budget. So just to clarify those points. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Debbie, if there are any public participation that have not yet gone, we certainly would recognize them.
Yes, there is. Katie Scambio. Katie, you're in.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
I'll go right to the bar, right to the bartender. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Katie Scambio. I'm a tax-paying resident of Lincoln. I have 2 children in this school, 1st grade and 3rd. The low teacher-student ratio of Lin-Wood was a major factor of why we decided to raise our family in this community. I've been an educator for 18 years, and I'd like to say that teaching during a pandemic has been the hardest of all of my years. I'm extremely proud and thankful of the work the Lin-Wood teachers and staff have done this year to keep our students safe and learning in person. The measure of a school should not solely be placed on test scores. Lin-Wood's a community school with staff that cares about the social and emotional state of all children.
Excuse me for a second, Katie. Katie, excuse me just for a second. There's somebody who's speaking who's not muted. You haven't been recognized and your language is inappropriate.
Oh. Robert, is it okay
for me to Katie. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Yes, sorry to interrupt.
All right, thanks. I guess I'll just continue with where I left off. The measure of a school should not be solely placed on test scores, as many of the budget committee has mentioned, not just tonight, but in other meetings that I've listened to over the last few weeks. Lin-Wood is a community school with staff that cares about the social and emotional state of our children, and that should certainly be celebrated. One of the budget committee members used the term adequate education in his explanation of the budget tonight. We should be striving for excellence and not settling for adequate education. The children of this community deserve so much more than just an adequate education. I do not support the cutting of any positions and feel that education should be of the highest priority of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Debbie, is there anybody new that has not yet spoken?
I don't see anyone new.
Okay. Kelsey has only gone once, so why don't we let Kelsey back in, please?
Okay, it's actually Paul.
Oh, I thought both of them were waiting. I'm sorry.
Oh, I don't see.
Paul has gone twice.
Paul's
so
in. Okay, I just put him in.
That's okay.
Hello.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I just have some further questions that I'm thinking about as everyone's speaking. But Do you know, does anyone happen to know the tax impact of the current school board represented budget for Lincoln and for Woodstock, as well as the tax decrease, if there would be a decrease for Lincoln or Woodstock with the budget committee's recommendation? Do we have that information?
Yes.
And furthermore, I think that Mr. Bartlett, although he represented that the budget was down, the operational budget for this year, I think, was down, but the total budget is up. Am I correct?
When you add in the warrant articles, but one of them is a bond.
Right, but I mean, the budget as a total is up. So I mean, it's not, you know, the taxpayers aren't going to just fund just the operational budget. They're going to fund the total budget. So the total budget from last year to this year is up. Am I correct?
The biggest increase, biggest change, the operating budget itself is lower than last year's, but when you add in the warrant articles, that total number is up, yes, because there's a bond article, that $540,000, but it will be paid over 10 years.
Right, right. But the bottom line budget, total budget is up from last year to this year when you're comparing across the total budget. I'm sorry, I didn't, did you not hear me, or?
I think that's already been answered. Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
If you added all the warrant articles, including the bond article, that does bring it over last year.
Okay, so could you give me the tax impacts for Lincoln and Woodstock for the school board's proposed budget, and the tax impacts for Lincoln and Woodstock with the budget committee's recommended budget?
Okay, so for the
per thousand, right?
Yeah,
would that be?
I can do it per thousand. Yeah. So for just the operating budget.
No, no, the total budget.
Okay.
Total budget.
Well, then I'll have to go back and add that. I have it all broken up by pieces. I'll get that to you in a couple minutes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where we're really at here. You know, totally what Lincoln will pay and Woodstock will pay it's represented by the school board, and totally what Lincoln and Woodstock each will pay as it's represented by the budget committee.
Okay, yeah, I have that broken out separately, but I'll add that all up and get that to you guys in a couple minutes.
Thank you, Debbie.
Okay, if there's no new public people waiting, then I'll recognize Matt Manning.
Thanks, Rob. I didn't realize I still have my hand up. I think Jay spoke to most of the points I was trying to make. One big piece of tonight's discussion, it seems like there's this big conflict between the school board and the budget committee as to what the budget should be. And I just want to remind people that the budget committee presented last year's budget. It was their budget that was voted on by the taxpayers and the community members. This year's budget is in direct conflict with the budget that they presented last year and passed. The school board took last year's committee's budget and presented them a budget this year as a baseline that was already reduced by 1.5% from their budget from last year. So it's not that there's this huge conflict. They're in conflict with themselves. It's not us, although I don't think any of their cuts are appropriate. The other piece is Heather Krill had made some comment about staff reduction. The board, over the 10 years that I have been on the board, there has been a reduction in staff, typically through attrition when we can do that, but we don't arbitrarily cut staff if it doesn't seem warranted. I believe that was all that was left open. Thank you.
Bonnie, I'm not sure if your hand is up from last time or if you have something new, but if you have something new, go right ahead. And you're on mute.
Okay, just a couple of things. are we going to talk about the warrant articles, Tucker, or somebody asked, they didn't know our thoughts on the warrant articles. Are we bringing that up a little bit later, Tucker?
The planned agenda is, the planned agenda is to talk about this article. I guess it's Article 7 right now, and then we're going to go through each article individually.
All right, that's what I thought. So I'm not going to say anything about the warrant articles if that's what we're doing next. The other question I have is a procedural one. Obviously, the budget committee welcomes input and heard all the input. And of course, we have to take a final vote on the budget, having heard all the input. Deb, I guess, might be the one that knows how long do we have to deliberate on what we've heard tonight and arrive at our final budget. Deb, when is the latest that you need to get a budget from us?
I'm just looking at the timelines on my wall. It looks like we have to get the warrant to the newspaper by February 24th. We have to get it out, which means we have to have the budget, because the budget and the warrant go together.
Right. And how much before the 24th do you need to get the budget from us to print it up or get it in the book or whatever?
Well, I have to run everything through the Department of Revenue, so probably at least a couple days before that.
So we can.
And then everyone has to sign.
So we can continue to work along up until February. What would be our drop?
10 days from now would be February 20th. Is it fair to say February 19th is a Friday?
I guess that would be fair to say.
So the 19th. Well, thank you. I just wanted to know, because obviously we've heard a lot tonight, a lot of opinions expressed, and we haven't finished. So that's good news. Thank you.
Debbie, this is Matt. Would we have to have another budget hearing?
I think we can recess this meeting, so then we don't have to go through all the posting requirements again, because if we end the meeting and then set up another budget hearing meeting, it's the posting requirements. It requires at least 7 days notice of the budget hearing. So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, but I think we could recess and continue the meeting, so we don't have to go through the posting requirements.
I believe that's correct. We would pick a date and time tonight so that it was announced now, and that would alleviate us doing that several days in advance thing. So if we chose next Wednesday, the 17th, we certainly can do that if that's works for everybody involved.
Yeah, and I think, I think all of the budget committee members need to weigh in on that, but I'm certainly willing to work along a bit more.
Okay. If that's the case, I believe we've heard quite a bit from the public. We've heard quite a bit from both boards about this one article, and I'd like to move on to further articles so that your committee does, or I'm sorry, your board does have more information when you do meet again. Does that sound fair to everybody?
Sounds
great.
To be honest with you,
okay.
If we're going to meet again, Rob, should we just table everything and bring it back up at that point?
We could, but the general public has really been looking at this date. There are 58 of them still here. And I think that if they're here to speak about a particular article tonight, I want to give them that opportunity. And if Bonnie and the other budget committees are going to be thinking about what they might want to do before next Wednesday, I think they need to hear more public comment now.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Can I hear what
You're
Joe
welcome.
has to say, please?
Can I just make a quick comment, Rob?
Yes, of course.
I just want to, comparing this year's budget committee to last year's budget committee definitely should not be done, because they're two completely different boards. They have a diverse expertise, but they are different people, different ideas. They come from different parts of the state expertise. So comparing that to last year really shouldn't be done. I think they deserve a little bit of more respect, and that's just my 2 cents. I think everybody's trying to accomplish the same thing, the best thing for our kids. I'm not saying that I agree with the cuts or anything. I'm just saying that they deserve respect too. Thank you.
You're welcome, Joe. So I'd like to bring up the next one that probably will be, I have a lot of information, would be Article 5. And the articles here are not finalized by any means. The numbers are not finalized. The wording may not be finalized. It's just a draft. And therefore, I'm only going to summarize it. As you know, when you come to annual meeting, I read everything verbatim and we have it all right there. And there's not a need to do that during the hearing. We need to hear enough information so we know what we're talking about. So as it stands now in draft form, Article 5 would be for a bond for $540,000 to upgrade the HVAC system and controls at the Lin-Wood Elementary School. And in addition to that bond, an additional $13,500 for the first year's interest payment on the bond. And I will go back to the budget committees to see if they have any input on that. Mr. Barnaby or Mr. Stringham?
Tucker, you're muted.
Sorry, I think actually Bonnie wanted to address that. She has her hand up to
perfect.
grab
Okay.
that. Yep.
We haven't made, and all of us can speak for ourselves, and Tucker is our chair and Jerry is our secretary. We haven't made a final determination on, we did not agree with the warrant articles at the point in time, our last meeting. We didn't have all that much time to discuss them at great lengths. I think on each one, there's a variety of reasons among the committee members as to why they do not recommend. And I think the reasons, the HVAC, I think the reasons range from other ideas on how to fund it, not convinced that we had been presented with enough detail. We were presented with a sheet of paper that's been mocked up and scribbled on, and some of us didn't think that was an adequate presentation in order that we should have gotten more information. And I think among some of us, we just we're not in favor of the project at this time or as presented. So I think you're going to find we really hadn't made a final vote on it. We were waiting to listen to tonight, and I think the reasons for our not approving the warrant article are varied and more than one.
Thank you. And we'll turn to the school board. And I'm just going to recognize chairs because I'm not sure who's speaking on a particular article. So Mr. Manning, go right ahead.
Thank you, Rob. The HVAC system has been, the due diligence on that project has been over 5 years. It has had multiple hearings for the bond hearing, but also multiple project hearings. There are members on this budget committee, senior members of the budget committee that have been present for the 5 years that this project has been discussed. There has been an advisory committee formed. There has been 4 or 5 different possible options explored. The insinuation that the information is not available is simply untrue. There's been countless school board meetings that have discussed the project over the years. And that's where I will leave it.
Thank you. And if you're a member of the public and you have questions or comments about this particular article, please raise your hand so you can be recognized. Debbie, does it appear there's any general public?
Rob, could I say one
All
thing?
hood. Oh.
just to add to that, we had a meeting last week, I believe it was last week, with the engineer of the project that the school, the budget committee was invited to. I'm not sure how many attended, but
I think most of them were there.
yeah, most of them were there. So thank you.
You're welcome. Jay and Bonnie, I do see your hands up, but I do want to go to the general public and then
There's
we'll come
actually
back to
two
you.
right now, so I'll bring
Okay.
Paula Hood. Paula, you're in.
Hi, Paula Hood, voter in Woodstock, teacher at the school. I just have one quick question about this HVAC project. I know nothing about HVAC. I care to know nothing about it other than is the safety of our students compromised if we don't do this project? You say it's been going on for 5 years. Obviously, I've heard things through meetings and whatnot, and it does seem like this has been going on and on and on forever. And so I'm just wondering, you know, what's the impact on our kids?
Thanks for the question, Paul. Do you want me to speak to that, Rob?
Yes, please, because it's a specific question I would like to.
There is no safety risk. This is simply a plan for an aging system. It was selected first because although it's newer than the high school system has had upgrades over the last 10 years that includes new burners, new controls, whereas the elementary school has not had any upgrades and everything is as it came out of the box, so to speak. The other reason that the elementary school was selected first was that there was a red flag issue with piping from the oil tank to the school that needed to be addressed through the Department of Environment. So that was the catalyst to spur all of the due diligence we've done for both buildings and possibilities of multiple plants or single plants and all of that. Thank you.
Matt, can I touch on that real quick? I just want to say it's not the safety thing, but we definitely will gain efficiency from this project. Thank you.
And Deb, you had at least one other public participant?
Yep, Sue Fadden. So you just have to unmute.
Am I muted
There
now?
you are.
Okay. Could this be done in phases or does this need to be done entirely at one time? And I'm assuming that's what's happening with the price tag of this.
And again, because that's a specific question, I'll go back to Matt for an answer.
I am going to defer to Jay Dugay as he raised his virtual hand and his real hand.
Thank you. I think that, you know, I had wanted to mention one thing that wasn't brought up, but Ms. Fadden's question speaks to this issue is sort of the funding of this program, of this project. And it's being put to the voters as a bond that's going to be paid over the course of 10 years. And one of the things I think that's really important to note right now is that bond rates are extremely low. And I think at last check, we were quoted rates that were below a percentage point of interest on the bond rate. So, you know, obviously that may change slightly, but bond rates are at historic lows for projects like this. So we're not asking the taxpayers to come up with $540,000 in appropriations that are going to be raised by taxes this year. It is going to be spread over the course of the next 10 years. And so it is, in essence, while the project is going to be completed in phases, it's going to be paid for, obviously, in phases. From a strategic standpoint and from a cost saving standpoint, it doesn't necessarily make sense to break the project up into phases, given some of the economies that can be achieved by having one company come in and complete the entire project all at one time. That involves some savings for them that are passed on to us, as well as less disruption for the school generally. And we have a system that is failing in several ways. I mean, it still works, and as Matt said, it's not a safety issue, but there's certainly efficiencies to be had. Our control system is a pneumatic control system with leaks all over the place. We have band-aided together AC systems in parts of the buildings, and so it needs an upgrade. Doing it all at once makes the most sense. Paying for it over time at a very, very good interest rate, I think it makes sense as well, and that's why we're asking the community to support that project.
Thank you, Jay. And I'll recognize Jerry Stringham, and then we'll look to see if there's any more public.
Yeah, I like most of the committee. I was at the presentation on the boiler, but not being part of the 5-year history of the project, and perhaps the contractor feeling that he didn't have a lot of new people in the audience. We got really a very kind of sketch of a project. As part of the budget committee, we saw proposals for $2,500 of things that were 4 pages long and very well articulated. This literally was, had 8 different steps and had, a number next to each, one of which I think was over 400,000. So it wasn't, for a project of that size, it was, and with the rest of the budget committee feeling this wasn't necessarily the right time. It just didn't seem like it was ready to go. And at the point that we discussed it, that's why I was in favor of that, of a no on that particular warrant article. So, I look forward to continuing to hear comments.
There's a couple more in the audience.
Okay.
They've spoken before, but it's Kim Strathdy and Tony Drapo.
Sure. They're new speakers on this particular article, so we'll go ahead and recognize the first one.
Hello?
Kim Strath. Hi, Kim.
Hello. Okay. In general, let me just say I've been a homeowner for over 30 years. I am mechanically adept. Let me say that I think in the long run, the maintenance and preventative maintenance of our infrastructure at the buildings is of utmost importance. In the long run, it will cost us less to maintain it now rather than have a catastrophic failure. And the more one thing is rubbing and wrong, it's causing something else down the line to absorb more pressure. Then my other thought is, while it may not in essence be a safety issue to the children and our staff at the schools, I would say HVAC implies, and especially in terms of the pandemic, fresh breathing air and involves that. And I think in order to have our children in schools, the more we maintain their fresh breathing air and ensure that, the better off we'll be. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Debbie, do you have another?
Yeah, Tony's in. Tony Drapo.
Okay. I just have 2 quick questions, and they're easy questions. Since this is a bond, I believe that means that it needs to pass with a 2/3 majority at the annual meeting. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. So that really puts it in the hands of the public, whether they want to move forward with this project or not. I guess my other question would be, at this point, we're just looking for the budget committee to recommend or not recommend this warrant. Will it still come forward for the public to vote on it and approve or disapprove of it with or without their recommendation? Thank you.
Yeah, it is 3/5 majority now, Tony.
Okay.
Yeah, Tony, the lawmakers in Concord did change that. Chapter 38 of House Bill 1558 changed it to a 3/5 versus 2/3. So super majority, but a smaller margin.
Sure, okay.
And it will go to the voters with a notation that it is recommended or not recommended by both boards, unless we happen to go virtual like we did last year and there's a tabling thing. But certainly it will go to the voters, even if do you want to table it or not goes to the voters.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome. I don't see any other panelists with hands up. Do you have any other public?
Yeah, there is. Tom Saborn.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, Tom Saborn, Woodstock. So with the being an epidemic like we are, is this new system include any kind of virus particulate filter, either electrostatic or whatever? Only reason I ask, I know we just ordered a couple new ambulances and the ambulance building got a new system installed and the HVAC actually had an electrostatic virus particulate filter. Didn't know if that was something anyone knew or not.
I can speak on that if you want to. Because
I did see Mark Hood's hand go up.
Mark, unmute your thing and you can talk on it because we're using the same Univent systems and stuff. So that it would really be impossible to do that because each classroom has its own Univent and we're just upgrading the Univents. We're converting from air control to electronic control. This system will give us remote access, but it's not really going to affect the virus end of it at all. Mark, you can touch on that.
Yeah, basically, we talked with Wayne Fillion the other day. He was mentioning that we would be doing upgrades on filters in the units, and they also have a UV light that they are putting in the units now to combat any type of things like that, pandemic, the germs and whatnot. So there will be stuff done to upgrade when the system's upgraded.
But that is not included in any bid that we have seen so far in this price.
Right, Joe, and you got to remember that is a bid. That bid is higher than what it's supposed to be.
No, I agree, Mark, but we're talking about what is on the table right now. He asked if that was included in what they're voting on, and right now that's not included, correct?
Well, that I wouldn't be able to say because now it's just talk between me and Wayne.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And sorry, Rob, just for public's clarification, Wayne Fillion is the that Mark Hood was referencing is the engineer that the district retained to design the system.
Thank you. And Debbie, we'll go back to you for public input.
I do not see anyone with their hand raised right now.
Okay. Article 6 is the same numbers as last year. It's to set the salaries of school board, moderator, school district clerk, ballot clerks. None of those numbers changed. I will recognize the school board to see if they have any quick information for that. Mr. Manning?
I don't think it needs to be spoken to from the school board. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Mr. Barnaby?
I'm sorry, what was Article 6? I'm sorry,
It's to raise the money. Yeah, the monies are already included in the general budget, but it's to set the salaries for the school board, moderator, district clerk, ballot clerks.
I don't even think we're suggested on whether or not we recommend or not recommend on that.
Yeah, it's more advisory.
My guess is because it's included in Article 5, probably it doesn't include a recommendation.
Correct. I don't believe it. I don't believe it needs a recommendation.
Perfect.
Because that's there every year for the public to know what's going on.
Right. Yeah, and your recommendation would be in the budget that includes it. So that makes sense to me.
Correct.
So then we'll move to Article 8. 7 was the general budget. So Article 8, and I guess I didn't start with Articles 1, 2, 3, and 4 don't involve money, so we don't need to discuss them tonight. They're voting during the day and hearing agent reports and things like that. So that's how we started at Article 5 and moved on. Article 8 is regarding the collective bargaining agreement reached between the school and Lin-Wood Education Association, NEA, New Hampshire, for 2021-2022, $114,887. For 2022-2023, $112,635. And further to raise and appropriate the sum of $114,887 for the 2021-2022 school year. And we'll go to the Budget Committee first for that.
I hate to, Jerry, do you have on that one?
Well, I can talk to it a little bit, and you know, some of this will address some of the things that came up in the general budget. But you know, many of you may not know that I come out of the state legislature where I served the last 2 years on the Ways and Means Committee, and you know, my perception of part of what I was doing and what's going on is that that public school funding in general is under attack, and cities and towns with high property values are particularly susceptible. First of all, like the existing state budget this year is likely going to have somewhere between 90 million and 130 million less for cities and towns, basically to offset some of these educational costs than was in the last year's budget where local funding and education funding was a priority. There's current legislation to take money from public schools and appropriate them for private schooling, basically vouchers and school choice, House Bill 20 and so on. And of the biggest concern for us in a property-rich town like us has been Supreme Court decisions at the state level where cities and towns without property, adequate property to adequately fund the schools, where they're taxing at 2% or more just to fund local schools and still can't come within a third of or half of what our budget is per student, have sued the state, saying that the state budget formula for funding education is unconstitutional. They've won their case, and that's what led to that committee that I was talking about before, that said the state is responsible for providing funding for adequacy or adequate education. It doesn't mean that we can't have superlative results and superlative students, but the legal word they use is adequacy. And there's only 3 places the state can get the money. Number one is income tax. They're not going to do that. Number 2 is sales tax. And number 3 is statewide property tax. So basically, and we're seeing it, they're moving in that direction. There's a bill this year that towns like Lincoln that don't even appropriate the full amount of the statewide property tax that's paid now would have to turn that money over to the state, and that will raise our local property tax rate. So, and we're not looking at $150 on here for a $200,000 property. We're looking at something that's 10 times greater than that at least. It's also possible that these final bills they're looking at would restrict how much local schools can spend. So that was part of the perspective that I have in here. And when I'm looking at extraordinarily small classroom sizes of 2 students that led in general to supporting a budget that still has extraordinarily small classroom sizes, but a little bigger than what we have now. If you like Lin-Wood because we have small class sizes, this budget still has that in it. Now, the concern I have with this particular warrant article, because I really believe that we need to pay our fantastic teachers well, is the pay increases in here are 3.5%, sometimes over 5%. and the rate of inflation is 1.25%. Some of the formulas that are even in the committee itself talk about $1,300 per step. Everybody's getting $2,300 per step, even those with more than 10 years experience. So it seemed like that this particular contract might end up putting a lot of pressure on us in the future to make it harder for us to maintain our desired teacher to student ratios. And I thought maybe the teachers would want to think about whether this was really the contract that they wanted to go forward with, which, you know, is a 2-year contract with quite hefty compared to the rate of inflation and compared to the normal step raises. So that's kind of part of the discussion that we had on this in light of what's going on in the state. We do have time to breathe on this. So this is one element, and that's kind of my comment on that. So happy to add more, or if anybody else in the committee wants to talk about it, that'd be fine too.
I think that's good, Jerry. Really, we're looking for the last bit that you did there of specifically why this warrant article is a yes or a no. I do appreciate your backstory, though, and coming from Concord, where you have that knowledge from there. I'll recognize Matt Manning for the school board side.
Yeah, I mean, the school board's obviously in favor. It was negotiated with school board representation. I think now is not the appropriate time to try to create leverage for other issues that are in this budget. And that's what I got from those comments. Thank you. I'm not sure if any other school board member wants to speak to that.
I will just quickly say that we had several meetings with the Lin-Wood Education Association, and they were very respectful and productive meetings. It was give and take on both ends. And I think it's a very fair contract for both the Lin-Wood Education Association and for the school board and taxpayers. I think it was just fair and a very respectful process all the way around on both sides.
Thank you, Tammy. Debbie, is there any public participation?
Sorry, I just want to echo.
I really do want this. I'll let you go, Jasmine, because you haven't spoken yet tonight, but tonight really is the hearing for the public to be able to speak to you guys. So go right ahead, Jasmine, and then we'll go back to public comment.
Really, I was just echoing what Tammy said. It was a really respectful meeting that we had. Every meeting we went over it thoroughly. Everything was fair on both ends. And really that increase that we're seeing is continuously trying to bring us up to averages so that we can appropriately compensate our hardworking and dedicated teachers.
Thank you. Debbie, do you see any
I
hands up
don't
on
see
the
anyone in the
side?
public with any questions on this one.
Okay, I will recognize Vance Pickering.
Hi, Rob, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, I just wanted to point out for people who are listening at home, and both the board, school board and the budget committee, Mr. Stringer had mentioned that we have some breathing room or some time on this particular warrant article and encouraged the teaching staff to maybe reconsider, is what it sounded like. But that's not actually true, I don't believe. Like, that was a mutually negotiated and agreed upon contract. I don't think any party can decide to alter it. I think that would require both the teaching union and the school board to go back into negotiation, which at this point in time cannot happen. So I think that warrant article is what it is and just can't be changed. The other thing was I had a question just clarifying. It seemed like Bonnie had said at first with the heating system, the HVAC system, that they were undecided. And then Mr. Stringer said with this particular negotiated contract warrant article that his recommendation was no. I didn't hear like a consensus. The budget committee has voted to support or not support, and it's the budget hearing. So I was wondering at what point in time was that going to happen? Because I think the community is looking for, are they or are they not going to support warrant articles in particular. And that's it. Thank you.
I gathered that because we're going to recess this meeting to next Wednesday, that's when they'll be voting on the articles. I may have misunderstood that part, but tonight we'll continue discussing them, and then they'll make their.
Can you still hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Rob, I agree. It sounds like because we're going to recess, but it also sounded like coming into it, they weren't prepared to have a vote. So I guess I would encourage them to, if we're going to recess, to definitely take an action vote on everything next week. That's
Right.
it. Thanks.
And then they will have to, because the budget and warrant article must be made public and official by the 24th, but it needs to go through DRA. So we're going to say Friday the 19th is the deadline. So I think next Wednesday they will give their official thoughts. Bonningham, go ahead.
Yes, we would have, say, if we were not going to recess and continue until the 19th, we would have met after this public hearing and made those choices. After the hearing, after we've heard all of our input, we meet. And going into it, we didn't recommend, but that final decision on the budget, on everything, would come after a hearing is closed, and that's when we come up with our final recommendation to bring to the district meeting.
Thank you. Deb, do you see anything from the public?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Robert, this is Robert McAfee. I don't have a hand raising thing, so
Okay.
I just wanted to jump in and point out that Vance, Mr. Pickering, you're mistaken. The contract with the teachers is not validated until a budget is set up to support it. Until a budget is voted upon, that contract does not stand. That's how it becomes valid. Thank you.
I think as far as negotiation, though, even at annual meeting, that particular article is not amendable. It's either yes or no. And so it's the negotiation part that has already occurred is what's happened. Jay Duguay, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I just want to express some concern about some of the comments that I've heard from the Budget Committee, and particularly the suggestion that maybe the Education Association and the teachers that are members may want to reconsider whether that's the contract that they want, backed up by the apparent willingness of this board to arbitrarily cut 6 positions. Does not seem to me to be a productive way to negotiate a contract with the people and folks that we count on day to day to deliver the educational services for our community and for our children. That's sort of what comes across to me as sort of a threat. If you don't reconsider, we're going to cut your positions. Does not appear to me to be a productive way to make sure that our school is functioning at the highest level. Thank you.
And Tucker Barnaby.
Yeah, just because you just said that, Jay, that is not at all what happened, as in a threat or any way at all. Again, this budget is approximately 72% staffing, and that makes it very difficult when you're trying to recommend, look at everything. I'm new to the process, so I'm learning as we go. I will say that I was under the impression, and we did not recommend the warrant article so that we could hear this. Our budget is not complete until we've heard all this information. That's what I was under the impression, that this evening we would finish. Now we're going to recess to finish, which is great, to finish our recommendations, because we want to hear from all those attending, from the public and from the board. I'm going to throw something out there too that was said earlier about how the budget started in February. I got asked to be on this board. I'm grateful and I enjoyed it, and I will do it again. Unfortunately, I missed signing up. I didn't understand the procedures. So why aren't we involved in February? Why are we asked in December to come to a budget meeting? So that's where I think we as a board, both boards, should get together on those issues. I'm just throwing that out there because I've heard a lot said, and that's how we can really come together and really get something done here. So the warrant articles, our recommendations have been made, and we wanted to hear more. So that's what we're here for. And we want to continue to hear from everybody. So thank you.
And I do see Vance Pickering's hand up.
Thanks, Rob. Just Tucker, thanks for that comment. I appreciate it. I don't know who said February, but when the new school year starts, the faculty actually starts forming their budget in the fall, not in February. So the school board itself, we get the budget at the same time the budget committee does, which is November. So that's not a true statement. If someone made it, I apologize, but we don't start budgeting in February of a school year for the following school year. We wait until the school year starts in the fall. Faculty has a date that they have to get their budget line items together. They present it to administration. Administration kind of puts it together in one giant binder, and usually around Thanksgiving, both the budget committees and school board get it. It is a really cumbersome, time-consuming project, and they get it to us as early as they can, and that date is November. Thank you.
Yeah, Vance, real quick, I said February by mistake. So I meant the fall.
Gotcha. All right, thanks.
Yep.
And Jay Dugan, is your hand still up on purpose? Okay. Jerry Stringham, go ahead.
Yeah, just both to Vance and Jay, thank you for your comments. And just to follow up on Tucker's sentiment, this meeting was very much a critical part of the budget discussion, including the warrant articles. We were looking for this information. I was looking for the information. Vance, one quick comment that when I said, there's time, it's not about the that is about the process of education funding at the state level. That's not going to change tomorrow, but it's changing. So the wind's blowing. I was referring to what's going on in Concord, not this particular article. But I was just, I only referred to it because for me, it had some relevance. May not for anybody else on the committee. But thank you for your comments, and Jay, thank you for yours, and Tucker, thank you.
Thank you. We are only, I don't know if we're even halfway through the articles yet. So I do think that we need a quick, yes, we are supporting it, no, we're not supporting it, and this is why, from both boards if we're prepared for that. And then public comment. Next is the replacement of the roof area, which you've alluded to by a couple of comments already, but we've not heard anything from the public. So I think there's still a lot of valuable information to come out of our meeting. And it's getting late, and I know the school board had hoped to meet after this meeting too. So I do apologize that our meeting's going long, but it is why we're meeting and having all this great valuable information. So we've left off now. Article 10 is to vote to raise an appropriate $154,000 for the replacement of the Lin-Wood Middle High School roof area, encompassing the middle school hallway and classrooms and main entrance hallway, approximately 14,000 square feet. And Matt Manning, I'll recognize you.
Yeah. This is a warrant article that is recommended by the school board. There were comments earlier regarding, it makes sense to take care of the roof as it's the final piece of a 10-year project. And by not doing so with the condition that it's in, it could cause problems that might cost us financially down the road. Thank you.
Bonnie, or anyone from the budget committee? Sorry.
Yes, and as I said before, we hadn't made final recommendations on the warrant article and/or definitively endorse the roof project or not. I personally think the roof project needs to be done for a variety of reasons. I think last year I lobbied to do that whole section, not half of it, if you remember. I wanted to spend more on roofs. So I think part of, and I can't speak for all the board members, but part of not recommending it was there again, how to fund it. I think you'll notice further on that doesn't have maybe, well, it has something to do with this. We had different thoughts on the trust funds, if you'll note. And so in our mind, we had other ideas perhaps as to how to pay for the roof. And so that comes to play also. So that's part of it. It's part of it, how to pay for it. And I don't know that we had a definitive vote and that all of us are in favor of the roof or not. And that was something we were going to decide after the public hearing.
Thank you, Bonnie. Debbie, are there any public participants?
Yep, Sue Fadden. Sue, you're in again.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Okay,
can.
so I had actually raised my hand during the last warrant article, but that's okay. I mean, I think my thought is that there's a little animosity between the budget and the school board, and I don't quite understand it. I am a past budget member and a school board member for many years, and the budget committee was always formally invited to the board meetings as we began the budget process, which when I was on the board was late October, because I usually miss the first one or two because I was on my vacation. There's a lot of thought, and both committees should be meeting during October, November, December, and then when the budget moves on to their own. And maybe it's because there were no people in the community that ran for these seats on the budget. I'm not sure. And these people were brought in late. But I don't understand why the budget committee feels that they didn't have knowledge. It doesn't make any sense to me. And maybe I don't really understand if something has changed. I guess that's my question. Has something changed?
I really want to stick to the topic of our roof right now. So I'm going to not pass your question on, but I think it's a good rhetorical question too. And Bonnie, I see that you're waving your hand. You have something specific about roofing?
No, I was going to address Suzanne's comment and why it's different this year. But that can come.
I am going to ask you to, I'm going to ask you to hold that, and so we can move on. Thank you, though. Debbie, do you have anybody else from the public? Okay.
No.
Article 11 is to vote and establish a special education capital reserve fund for the purpose of meeting the expenses of students with disabilities and to raise and appropriate the sum of $184,000, with said sum to come from the June 30, 2021 unassigned fund balance. And I'll recognize Matt Manning or someone from the budget committees. Normally I meet with the school board and we know who's speaking on which subject or which article. Because I haven't done that, I'm just going to recognize the chairs to get going.
I'd like to defer to Tammy Ham if she's on, because I think Tammy can speak to it much better than I can. So,
Tammy, you're muted. Debbie, can you try to unmute her?
Oh, maybe this is, I can read your lips. This is a different, I was thinking of the capital fund.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I'm reading Tammy's lips as we speak.
Well done.
I'm actually, could I defer this to, I think Debbie could speak more clearly to this.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
I will.
This is a different one.
So this is more of a housekeeping thing, I guess. What the school board had talked about, we have a special ed trust fund. And the mechanics of a trust fund is anytime the school board are agents to expend, but anytime they expend money from a trust fund, they have to have a public hearing. And it was recommended by our attorney that because it's special ed and you're talking about specific students in many cases, if we're going to access this fund, that we change it to a capital reserve fund. Because the capital reserve fund, it serves the same purpose as a trust fund, and it's held by the trustees of the trust funds, but you don't have to have that public hearing to expend those funds. So it was really to protect this sensitive student data, student information, if we need to expend money. So the mechanics of doing this is we have to close one account, and that money lapses into surplus, and then we create the new account. So we close the trust fund, create the capital reserve, and then it lapses into surplus, and then we technically into our unassigned fund balance at the end of the year, and then we can deposit that money into the new account. Is that good?
I think so.
And as budget committee member, I'm sorry, again, I don't have a hand raising capability, but to speak to her point, the reason the budget committee did not go along with that or support that is because by moving it into that fund, that money could be expended on any issue that they wanted to, rather than keep it specifically. Now they can say they're going to keep it specifically for it, but they would be able to use that out of the capital fund for any issue that they could out of the that they would use the capital fund for. At least that was the understanding that we had in the description that we were given.
No, it's specific to whatever you put it into.
So the reason you didn't recommend it is you don't trust the administration. Thank you.
Matt,
I
that's
think,
enough, Matt. Come on now. That's
yeah,
enough.
it sounds like there was a misunderstanding. The capital reserve fund, this specific one is labeled special education capital reserve fund. It's not just a capital reserve fund for any capital. So we'll move on to the next article unless there's really what we're doing is questions and answers.
Real quick, wasn't there also an increase of money put into that fund? Or was that just the moving of the fund?
That's just moving, but there is another article later on,
Okay,
like all the other trust
I just
funds.
making sure.
Yep.
Just making sure I didn't mix them up. Okay, thank you.
Robert, is Brian?
Yes.
I raised it a while ago, and I think we missed it. We moved on to the next article, but
I'm sorry, my screen only shows 16 people at a time, so I can't see all the panelists at one time.
Oh no, but okay, there's a little thing on the side you can make it say raise your hand. But I guess the point is I had a question just referring to Article 10, and I've been waiting because after Bonnie made her explanation, I just wanted to know if the budget committee could share with us some of their funding solutions that they have. Because she stated that they have other ideas of how to fund these projects.
Aren't we specific?
Bonnie, we certainly
right
can go
now
to that.
Rob, aren't we specific right now to whether we're approving or not approving the warrant articles as written?
Yes, but I have
right now we're looking for yeses and nos to a particular warrant article, not necessarily approving them, but on my screen again, I see only 16 of the panelists at one time, so I didn't see Brian's hand up. He's on my second screen. So I didn't see that his hand was up when he had a question about Article 10 when we were talking about Article 10. So right. I'll allow it.
And that was my question. She mentioned that there was they're not recommending due to how to fund it, and that they have other ideas of how to fund. And I'm just asking if they could share with us some of those ideas so that we're more informed as we go forward into next week and we return and convene on this.
I believe she mentioned the appropriation from the unassigned fund balance when she spoke, but perhaps I misunderstood.
And using some money out of the trust fund, a couple of the trust funds is what or a trust fund is how I understood it when I was at their meeting.
Yeah, Joe, you jumped in on, I was going to say the same thing. There was the idea that we would use trust funds rather than continue to build on them. They're coming up in a minute, and that's where we thought some of the funds could come from, where we're trying to keep the budget, all the money to some type of a minimum. It's one area that we tried to reduce. We thought we could use the trust fund. And again, there was lots of things spitballed. So, and I see Bonnie waving her hand, so I'll let her jump in.
And that was it, to look at the trust funds and perhaps take some funds out of the trust funds. We had a lot of discussion of why are we putting money in trust funds for projects we don't know what they're going to cost or how much we need in the first place, and we might have too much, we might have too little. So one of our thoughts was to not put the traditional 100,000 into any trust funds, and that frees up some funds for current projects, as well as look in those trust funds. And if we have a little extra we can take out of those trust funds, especially where we don't have a capital improvement plan, we don't know what we want to buy for a vehicle or what we want to buy for anything. Why do we keep artificially putting more money in the trust funds, and maybe this is the day we should take some of the monies out of them towards the roof or towards the HVAC or something else. So that's what I was referring to. There may be found money that's sitting in the trust funds we can use, and or not to vote on warrant articles that puts 100,000 into these funds this year. So that's where the money comes from, we were thinking.
Thank you, Bonnie. I just thought that, just helps share that information with the people, made it a little more clear. Thank you.
Debbie,
Robert,
do
there's a-
any public people
Yeah,
have their hands
yeah.
up?
Yep, Sue Fadden.
Okay.
So is the budgets committee's thoughts to rob Peter to pay Paul? I mean, the trust funds are set up for a reason. So that we're planning. It's a plan. We know we're going to have to replace vehicles. We know we're going to have to replace equipment. We know we're going to have to replace facility, different parts of it. So we're going to rob for those accounts now to pay for something that makes absolutely no sense.
Thank you, Sue. Deb, is there anybody else?
Nope, I don't see anything right now.
Okay, Jay Duguay.
Thanks. I just wanted to add that with respect to the funding of the trust funds, the idea of having sort of a rainy day fund for these specific items, technology, facilities, transportation, special education, is to account for sort of the inevitability that there is going to be unforeseen circumstances and unforeseen expenses that pop up. And, by placing money into these funds, we are preparing for that inevitability. We use the funds on a regular basis. Every time money is expended from one of those funds, we have a public hearing to discuss those funds. They're an important part of the way in which the school operates. We may not have money in the budget to account for some unforeseen expenses in the general fund budget, and that's where we then use the funds from the trust fund. And it's not an arbitrary or process. There's a notice, there's a public hearing to discuss the expenditure of the funds. The public has input about the expenditure of the funds, and then ultimately the board approves the expenditure of the funds. And so they do represent an important piece of the school funding puzzle. I think they're very valuable for the operation of the school, and I would suggest that the budget committee recommend them. I think that they are an important piece of our funding puzzle. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Articles 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17 are all about placing money in capital reserve funds. I'm going to list them all. One is for school facilities expendable trust fund. One is for school vehicle expendable trust fund. One is for school equipment expendable trust fund. One is for school technology expendable trust fund. And one would be for if Article 12 passes, for the special education capital reserve fund. It sounds like the conversation we're having all involves all of the capital reserve funds at once, whether it's the budget committee's concern of do we need to put all the money into each of those, and the school board's recommendation that we do need to keep those where they're at and adding money to them. So I'm comfortable adding Articles 12 through 17 together in this conversation. If anyone has any specific to any one of those topics, please feel free to say why yes or no for that one. But I think it's fair to talk about all capital reserve funds at one time now.
Actually, I would say that you really said it that way. The budget committee at this time had thought maybe this is a year not to add to the budget by putting into the capital funds or into all of the trust funds this year. It's not, like this is going to happen every year. We're wondering if this is a year that maybe we don't want to put it in, or these large amounts into those trust funds at this time. There's a lot we're looking at and trying to figure out. So yeah, I would say that we looked at all of them, sorry, and felt like maybe this is a year we don't put that much into every single one of them.
Thank you. Matt Manning again is the chairperson. I'm going to see if you have anything to add from the school board side on expendable trust funds.
I don't really. I kind of echo Sue Fadden on her comments, and I guess I'd just be interested in waiting to next week to hear what the recommendation is from the budget committee. I mean, if there's ways to maybe trim back on some of them for this year that makes sense, then it might be something that we could agree on. I haven't heard any different at this point. So there's a difference between not recommending or recommending a different amount, and I'm happy to wait and hear what their recommendation would be.
And I think that's part of the problem,
Yeah.
is that we are told recommend or not recommend. We're told we can't change those articles. So that's part of why the not recommend at this time as we listen, so that we can come to an agreement between the two, between everybody, so that's exactly, where you want to go. But the articles, I believe, I could be wrong. Again, I'm new to this process, that we as a board or as our committee was recommend or not recommend. So I could be mistaken.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure. I would think that any warrant could be amended, but I don't. Is that not true, Deb?
I think at this point,
We're too late.
the school board writes the other warrants, and yes, the budget committee at this point can only recommend and not recommend. Now, maybe based on input, you guys could change it.
Sure.
The school board could change it, but anything can be changed at the annual meeting as far as the dollar amount,
Or even moving forward to next.
except for the CBA.
Right.
That's something that I wasn't aware of, Tucker. I thought that this was something that could be changed up until this point, and that's so. I mean, even moving forward to next year, even if we can't change this year's, at least we have that knowledge. So,
But the school board could change it.
And actually, all of this was really how much we can or can't change. That's because we want to keep moving forward and seeing what we can do as a group together. So.
Thank you.
We have
Debbie
two
O'Connor,
people
does
in-
it look like?
Yeah, we have
Okay.
2 people in the audience. Brent Bradley.
Hi, Brent Bradley. Maybe I don't understand the trust fund piece of this properly. Is this fund something that earns any type of interest or is tied to index funds or something like that? Or is it simply rainy day money that gets put away and is static? Thank you.
And I'll recognize Deb, our business manager, probably is the best to answer.
They're basically savings accounts. They're all set up for specific purposes, to like town capital reserve funds, all set up for specific purposes, but they are accessed throughout the year. So they're not like tied into any long-term investments. And they are managed by the trustees of the trust fund from the town of Woodstock. That's how this district set that up. They are our trustees of the trust fund. But they work just like the town capital reserve funds that you see.
And you have one other person in public.
Sue Fadden.
My question is, doesn't the money for the trust funds come from unexpended funds? So money that wasn't spent for the yearly operations, what's left over is put into these trust funds.
Yes.
Yes,
that's what this district
and
has
that's my
done.
fault.
Yeah.
I didn't read the articles in their entirety, but it does say from the unassigned fund balance that's available after July 1st that no money would be raised through taxation.
So there's no increase in taxes by it.
That's correct.
Okay, just want to make that clear.
Anybody else, Deb?
Not at this point.
Okay, Joe Duguay.
Thanks. So I think two things to clarify Mrs. Fadden's question. It is from the unassigned fund balance, but if that money was not spent or allocated to these trust funds, it would be returned to the taxpayers of the towns of Lincoln and Woodstock. And so, although it's not, we're not raising the money from taxes, it would, it would affect the taxation rates going forward if it was not assigned to the trust fund. So just as a clarification, it is money, and we're putting it away, we're putting it aside, for these specific purposes. I would also just like to, with respect to the trust funds, in the 3 years that I've been on the board, and then I was on the budget committee the year before that, typically what we get is, from the budget committee is a recommendation. They'll identify a line item in the budget and say, for example, I think a couple of years ago, one of the issues was we had included about $10,000 for cutting of dangerous trees around the property. The budget committee came to the board and said, we think that as a one-time type expense, that should be a trust fund issue, a trust fund expenditure, as opposed to a budgeted expenditure. The boards were able to reconcile that issue and come to an agreement that we would not include that money in the budget, but expend it from the trust funds. But that I haven't heard anything of that nature with regards to the funding or the usage of these trust funds, or any specific line items that the board or the budget committee has identified that we should be funding through the trust funds, as opposed to budgeting for those items. And it's sort of been suggested that may be the case, but without sort of the specific recommendations, it becomes impossible for the board to reconcile our recommendations with the budget committee's recommendations on some of those issues. And that's why it's important to have those trust funds funded, so that if these issues do come up, there is money available to address those one-time expenses that don't necessarily need to be budgeted on a yearly basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie, go ahead.
Yes, you'll be happy to know, Jay, cutting the dangerous trees is in the budget. We're not going to have to take it out of a trust fund. We put it in the budget. But what we were thinking is we didn't see anything. We didn't see anything or hear about anything that the school board had in mind to take. We heard about one thing and we took that into consideration, but we did not hear much about anything that the school board thought they needed the trust fund dollars for. So we didn't want to add any more in. And we thought the roof might be exactly something that we use some of that money towards. And now might be a good time to use some of the funds. And I think you'll be happy to hear, everyone, that we certainly had no intentions of draining the special ed capital reserve fund. We did not. We talked about that. And no, you absolutely need money set aside for special education, because you never know when you might get an expensive out of district expense. So we didn't intend to take money out of that one, not add more in, but not take any out of that one, feeling that's a very important one, but was unsure as to maybe there might be 10, 20,000 that can come out of some of the others, or even 50,000.
I know personally, we asked about the vehicles coming up for purchase and there wasn't anything.
Nothing.
So that was why that one singled out was not recommended putting any in, because we have nothing to buy or nothing coming up needing to buy, unless there's something we don't know about that didn't come down to our meeting that needs to be purchased in the next school year. We just thought there was enough and leave it alone.
And that was John Hamm from Budget Committee.
Sorry, Robert, I jumped in, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Does it look like there's any public participation, Deb? Okay, Jay Dugan, is your hand still up, or do you have something new?
Yeah, just one sort of clarification. I mean, the suggestion that we haven't identified items to be purchased or projects to be, for the trust funds to be used for, I mean, is the very nature of the trust fund. Those are designed to be a rainy day fund for unanticipated expenses. If it was an anticipated expense, we'd be putting it in the budget. So the very nature of those trust funds and the very purpose that those trust funds are designed to address are the types of expenditures that we cannot foresee, and we unfortunately have no way of knowing, what they will be going forward. Thank you.
And I'll give just a moment now to see if any hands go up or if we have anybody from public or the panelists that don't have that hands function to add any comment.
There was a question. I know that was a while ago, but I just wanted to, although I can give those impact as everything stood before this meeting, since that question was asked.
Paul did ask that. I think it was going to change. It sounds like the budget committee needs to vote on all the articles before we really do have a true number. But as of this moment, with the budget committee's budget proposal and not recommending any other articles, what would those tax impacts be?
Okay, again, I'm going to break it all down separately and then give you a total, just so you can see. The impact, the school board's budget, the operating budget, the impact of that for a Lincoln resident was minus 8 cents per thousand, and Woodstock was minus 15 cents per thousand, because again, their budget was going down compared to the prior year. The collective bargaining agreement is an increase of 8 cents per thousand for Lincoln and 16 cents per thousand for Woodstock. The roof warrant article is an increase of 12 cents per thousand for Lincoln and 23 cents per thousand for Woodstock. So overall, that's for the, and I'm not putting in the bond at this point. I can, but so those articles, because all the other ones, they don't have a tax that's coming from unassigned fund balance. So, so for Lincoln, in total for those was 12 cents per thousand increase, and Woodstock 25 cents per thousand increase, roughly. And then the budget committee, as their operating budget initially started tonight, it was 58 cents per thousand decrease for Lincoln and $1.15 decrease for Woodstock.
Thank you very much, Deb. And thank you, Paul, for asking that question. It helps us figure out all these numbers in each individual person's terms. So do I see a new hand up? I do, Jasmine.
I just want to say that I've worked on the board for 4 years, and Deb is unwaveringly just an incredible business manager. Is that your title? Yeah. And it's the work that she does is just incredible. And every time that I feel it's discounted, it's so hard, so difficult for me, because the amount of dedication that she has, not only to her job, but to our district and to our community. She attends everything. She's on every committee that she can be on. And the financial piece, I mean, I would trust you, Deb, with not only my children's and community school budget, but my personal budget. Like, actually, could you just do that? That would be great. But seriously, we are so incredibly blessed to have Deb, and I just want to throw that out there.
Thank you, Jasmine.
And Debbie, we'll do one more check to see if you have any public participation.
Kim Strapty again.
Okay, so at the very last second, I jotted down these numbers. It appears to me if you take those 4 categories for the 2 towns, both towns, our taxes net overall will be going down per 1,000. And I appreciate hearing it per 1,000 because you saying that your taxes will go down $150, that means nothing. It depends on how big your property is. So I really appreciate the per 1,000 numbers. And if I'm wrong on that, that's just what I see. Thank you.
And I'm not sure if there's anybody who's phoned in, if there's people who have phoned in, if we can see them and how they might raise their hand. So if you've phoned in, you're on the phone and you'd like to speak, certainly this is a moment for you. Okay, thank you, everybody. I think we've had a very valuable meeting with lots of input coming from both sides. I would like to recess the meeting, and we will recess the meeting and meet again virtually 1 week from tonight, which is Wednesday, February 17th at 6:30 p.m. And I will ask the school to send out all the information that they need to for our Zoom information. But again, we're in recess now until Wednesday, February 17th at 6:30 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Hey, Robert, thank you for what you do, man. You're greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Rob, could I, before everybody gets off, is this the same link for the school board meeting, Deb?
Yeah.
Can we take a 10-minute break before we get back on? Are the school board members okay with that?
That works for me.
Okay. Bonnie's raising her hand. I don't know if she's waving goodbye or she's raising her hand.
I'm just wondering, can we take the 10 minutes to decide when we're meeting? Can we stay here and decide when we're going to meet next?
That's fine with me. I just have to let my dog out.
If you want to meet before next Wednesday, then I think absolutely.
All right.
We can have that conversation.
Tucker, what do you think? When are we going to meet?
What's today, Bonnie?
That's it.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually an overall, for me, it's an overall of how this whole process is a little broken.
It is.
And I think
It's
part of
very
it too,
broken, Tucker, but
well, I think it's especially broken this year because of, and I hate to blame the pandemic for anything, but I went to those meetings as very new to this system. So I listened. I didn't know it was time to speak and talk to the school board. And then I remember we couldn't hear, the people who were Zooming couldn't hear. So it was a very difficult year, which made it even more broken than it has been before. So I just find that, this is difficult due to the understanding of how it works and due to all the information. Everybody's saying that you can't believe they didn't get the information, but it was very difficult to hear the board meetings when they went to the Zoom, not even the Zooms, but whatever they were doing when I went in person. Everybody who was Zooming in couldn't hear. So it's been a very unique year. So that's all. That's all. I mean, it seems like the budget committee and the school board should be talking a lot more.
Yeah, I think so too. Right along.
I've been on both committees, Tucker, and I think you're right. It needs to be more open. It needs to be more conversation, maybe.
Yeah, it's not just
maybe more of a joint meeting than us invited to their meeting. I've been on both sides of the table.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. Is it should be there should be some joint meetings about this stuff and some discussions. I might not be able to make every board meeting, throughout when they have all their meetings, and I know not every board member makes every board meeting, so they can really answer questions. Because they're involved in the budget before us, I believe. I would hope that they're overseeing it before us. Like I said, the budget starts probably in September with the people who are building it, and there's discussion back and forth that we're missed when we get it in December.
Tucker, can I just speak to that for a second?
Sure.
Just so you guys know, we get the budget basically right around the same time that you guys get it, when you guys are invited to the meeting with Deb, when she goes line by line. They're building that internally before then, but they're using your budget, the budget committee's budget from the previous year as kind of the baseline of where it's going to go down from, where they're building from. So I think that's some of the confusion. I mean, we talk about a lot of things at the school board meetings that build up to warrant articles or other things that we might add in addition to, but they're building from the budget committee's previous year's budget. But we're getting that at the same time that you're getting it, and you're invited to the first meeting that we get it to.
Yeah, and I was there. I was in.
No, there seems to be confusion. Like we're now, like people think that we're getting in a room and we're hashing all this stuff out together, where we are, in a sense, that we're all there at the same time, but we're seeing it when you see it.
Yeah, and it's almost like we wish we had more time to, to really ask questions,
Yeah.
Well, I think, Tucker, you understand it a little bit more this year. So next year it'll be a little easier for you. It won't be so much of an information gathering, but actually a number gathering. And I can say when I worked at the school, I didn't even have to submit my budget until I think it was the middle of October, or the end of October. So nobody really gets true numbers until late anyway.
Oh, and I get that, Joe. And again, that's why I've been pretty quiet, because I'm watching this process. I've been involved with a lot of budgets, and sometimes they were handed to me and I make them work. Other times we built from zero, and I mean zero. We assumed we had no teachers, and we went from there. So it wasn't built off the previous year. Built from zero means you have nothing in it. So again, I've been watching and learning, and I want to be involved in this again so that I can continue to reach out. And I think I think the process can get better. That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, and Matt, I just wanted to address, you seem to be rather indignant about the question about the controls on the funding for the special education needs. I don't know who's going to be in office on what day. I don't know who is going to be doing what, making what decision on what day. So it's not a matter of trust. It's simply a matter of, this is public dollars that needs to have appropriate controls in place. And I have no problem with what's already in place. There's a little more work that must be done to be able to draw the funds out. But, this is the public's money, and safeguarding the public's money is important to me. So sorry that you felt like it was a trust issue regarding you. It has nothing to do with you.
No, I didn't think it was about me. I thought it was about the administrators.
It wasn't about anybody. None of those. Who knows who's going to be in those positions tomorrow? I don't know. You don't know. So, to safeguard the public funds, I think is an important thing.
I think we all do. Thank you.